This week on Best Known For, what do you want? I want to talk about The Notebook. Hello and welcome to the inaugural episode of Best Known For. I'm your host, Sean Morgan. I'm here with my co-host, Ryan Turf. Ryan, say hi to the people.
Greetings.
Greetings, loved ones. Let's take a journey. This is a podcast about movies, but we are also about science and we're about truth. If you go to an actor's IMDb page and look at their known for section, how often do those four projects listed there actually represent that performer and what the public actually loves them for? We aim to answer that question, right? So in each miniseries, we are going to choose an actor. We're going to take their known for movies on IMDb plus 3 individual picks from each of our respective beloved films in that actor's oeuvre. So Ryan will pick 3, I'll pick 3, and then we're going to take those 10 movies and we are going to dissect each and every one. What is the goal of this? The goal is to, after breaking down those 10 films, Ryan and I will determine what the actor's Mount Rushmore truly should be, aka that actor's best known for. F-O-U-R. Get it? Cute, clever, flirty, fun. We begin with the man himself, Ryan Gosling. I guess probably, for my money, the most beloved kind of actor working today. I mean, other than Tom Cruise or Tom Hanks, can you think of someone that for a younger generation is as kind of universally praised, Ryan?
No. And unlike those actors, I think the best could be yet to come with Gosling. He's hot off Barbie. Even though The Fall Guy was not considered a box office hit, that was a well-liked movie. I'm curious to see what he does with his career going forward. But I think as far as actors who have balanced smaller, more grounded, independent films with big blockbuster genre movies, it's hard to beat the resume of Gosling. And I do think he's in a class of his own at the moment.
I agree with you to a certain degree. I feel like I don't know, unfortunately, if I agree with you that I think the best is yet to come. I think that he recently started his own production company, right? I think post Barbie, and I think maybe that was part of the team that made The Fall Guy was his own production company in partnership with David Leitch's, right?
Mm-hmm.
It feels like, and I think he's gone on record as saying he's trying to take lighter roles, spend more time with his family. And I feel like maybe he's kind of segueing into more of the business person side of things. He obviously very recently got nominated for an Oscar for Barbie, which is a movie that we will talk about later on in this series. But I hope that you're right. I don't know though. In preparing for this miniseries, I was kind of awestruck by just how much he's already accomplished. Um, and it feels like he may just kind of hang out and do victory laps now, deservedly so. But so I don't know if I agree with you in that respect, but I do agree with you that he is kind of a master class, or rather a class of his own compared to a lot of other actors working today. Um, this was an actor that you chose.
Mm-hmm.
We've been talking about doing this series for a while, and I think you got to pick the first subject because I can't remember. We had some sort of bet about some sort of pair of September releases and how they would do. I think you were saying, Beetlejuice would be this crazy smash hit. And I was like, I think it'll do okay, but I don't really know. Do people care about Beetlejuice again now today? I forget what the movie I was putting my chips on was. That's how handily you bested me in that particular race. And you picked Gosling, which I was totally open to. So the current known for on Gosling's IMDb, um, at the time of recording, right? Because we like the premise of this show as I stated it, but the problem is that the IMDb algorithm kind of shifts day to day. So sometimes movies will get bumped out. But at the time that we locked in the films that we chose to cover. Gosling's known for on IMDb are, in no particular order, Blue Valentine, La La Land, Drive, and The Notebook. And Lars and the Real Girl kind of sneaks in and out of there depending on when you check. But when we locked down the known for, those were the four on IMDb that we had chosen to cover. And I myself have chosen three films to throw into the mix. The three that I chose were Blade Runner 2049, which is not the subject of this episode, but is one of my favorite movies of recent memory, period, full stop. And then I chose both Half Nelson and Barbie, the two films, I think the only two films for which Gosling has been nominated for Academy Awards. Ryan, the three that you have chosen to throw into the mix here, which I think are good choices, kind of interesting choices, are The Nice Guys. I think kind of a modern cult classic, did not do well in theaters at the time. Crazy Stupid Love, which I think is a film that you and I both quite like and feel maybe is underappreciated as far as Gosling's filmography goes. Correct me if I'm wrong there.
You are correct.
All right, we'll talk about that later on in the series. And then the third film that you've chosen here, which is a little bit of a curveball, is First Man. So throughout the course of this series, we will be covering two, I think the only two, Chazelle Gosling collaborations. Gosling does not appear in any other Chazelle stuff, right? The only other Chazelle things I can think of are Babylon and Whiplash, neither of which features Gosling, right? So,
right,
kind of an interesting tidbit there. However, we're going to go in chronological order, meaning the first episode that we are going to produce here is about The Notebook. And I think that we should say before we get into it, we are going to do a scene by scene breakdown and kind of give our ultimate thoughts after the fact. And I think we should say though that I personally don't want this to come across as two dudes shitting on like a beloved quote unquote chick flick. I think we both have generally favorable views on The Notebook, so I just want to say that up front because we are probably going to rag on it a little bit. Although I don't want to speak for you. Are you like a Notebook hater?
No, I'm not a hater. It's a fine movie. I don't have any major problems with it, but I certainly don't hold it in the same regard that I think many do. But I have no problem with people loving this movie. I can understand the appeal.
All right. Well, you don't have to go into full on final thoughts just yet. But I am curious to know, what is your personal relationship with this film overall coming into this? Because I think that will color how we talk about it. I don't want to, like I said, I don't want us to give our like final thoughts and ratings and then just, kind of um, uh, shoot our
Wad.
shoot our wad too early here. But what's your pre-existing kind of relationship with this film before we get into it, and then I'll share mine after.
This is one of those movies that was in the mainstream popular culture lexicon for as long as I can remember. I believe this film was released 2004.
I'll fact check you, but go ahead.
And I believe the book was published in the late 90s, early 2000s. I have never read the book. I did not see this in theaters. I was a mere 7 years old at the time, so I was not the target demographic for this movie. So before I had ever seen it, and the first time I saw it was in high school, so that was probably about 10 years after it had been released, I already knew the ending. I already knew a lot of the quotes, a lot of the famous scenes. I had seen commercials for this whenever it was on TV, and clips here and there, channel surfing. I do feel like this was a movie that was often on TV somewhere. When I eventually sat down and watched it in high school, that was the only time I had seen the movie in full. until rewatching it for this podcast. So I've only seen the movie in full twice, and there was about a 10-year gap between the first time I saw it and rewatching it for this podcast.
I'm in a little bit of a similar boat as you. I did not see this when it came out. I was also around the same age as you. We were born pretty much at the same time. Um, but I was familiar growing up with the like iconography, the iconic scenes, the iconic kind of um ending. And the first time I watched it all the way through was in 2020, still during kind of not the height of the pandemic lockdown, but still at the tail end of it before everyone was fully vaccinated and going back out and this and that. And my girlfriend at the time and currently, if she's listening to this, um, we watched it together because it was one of those situations of like, oh, the Notebook's on Netflix. I've never seen it all the way through. And then she said, what? You've never seen it all the way through? And so we sat and watched it. And I think that my experience was colored positively by the fact that it had been a film that clearly brought her so much happiness throughout her years growing up. Like it clearly was something that she had watched a ton growing up as a tween and a teen. And there's something about watching a movie that is that for somebody else with that person. Do you know what I mean? That kind
Mm-hmm.
of endears it to you in a way. And also, I just thought the performances were very good. Um, I think that I kind of immediately was just like, oh, I get it. I get why this is the kind of touchstone that it is. And without giving too much away about my ultimate thoughts about it, it's also I think I haven't seen very many, but it's also if I had to guess, probably the best and most well-made Nicholas Sparks thing that's out there. I think the only other Nicholas Sparks adaptation that I've seen is uh please correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know if you have an encyclopedic knowledge of this. A Walk to Remember, which is one with Mandy Moore,
Yes,
and the twist, spoiler for A Walk to Remember, in that film is that she has like terminal cancer.
I believe so.
And I full disclosure, maybe we'll talk about that film someday down the line. I hated that film.
What?
I was not familiar with the twist. So the whole time she's like being cagey about what her fucking deal is, I'm like, oh, this is they're doing some crazy table setting. There must be some like hinge upon which this movie turns, and everyone likes it, so it's got to be good. And then she just goes, "Oh, by the way, I'm like probably about to die," and I was just like, "Ugh,
But Mandy
god
Moore
damn it."
sells it. The Mandy Moore.
Sure,
Candy.
sure, 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 sure. Anyway, and I will say that I saw the Notebook on Broadway, the pretty recent uh, Broadway musical adaptation
Mm-hmm.
with Jessica, my girlfriend, and we both really liked that too. She liked it a little bit more than me, I think. She's got some of the songs on repeat way more than I do. Um, and it was kind of a fun experience because, well, actually, you know what? I will say that I cried more than she did
Mm,
during the course of the show because
interesting.
I think she's seen the movie so many times that she's like, I know how the Notebook goes. And I was still like, I had still only really seen it that one time. So I
Mm-hmm.
was ready to let the tears go. But there were women around us who of course knew what happens,
Mm-hmm.
and they started crying like a full like a full 20 minutes before any really sad shit happens, which was kind of funny. But we are about to get into the film itself, and I'll go scene by scene here because we do want to focus on it as a entry in Gosling's kind of filmography a little bit. But not to call you out, Ryan, if I'm remembering correctly, the number one song on your Spotify Wrapped was from The Notebook on Broadway.
It's true. I did not see the show, and I believe it just closed a few days ago. So I will never see the show unless it happens to come on tour. Um, but through a mutual friend of ours, Dean Marino, Mr. Dean Marino,
Shout out.
who loves the show and loves the score, he recommended the music. And from what I heard on the album, I did find the score quite moving, and there are some great ballads and duets on there. So I do have some fondness for the music, even if I've not seen the actual stage production.
Okay, so all this is to say something about the DNA of this movie has endeared itself to both Ryan and I. So as we go through, as we talk a little bit of shit, we are not some like Andrew Tate motherfuckers who like just hate anything that women like. Um,
And I read a Nicholas Sparks novel from beginning to end. It was not this one. I read, I believe it's called The Lucky One. It was
oh,
made into,
is that
it
the
was
Liam Hemsworth one?
no, Zac Efron.
Oh, excuse
It's
me.
Zac Efron, which is why I read the book, because I'm a big Zac Efron fan.
You are a big Zac Efron fan.
I read it in high school in Mrs. Weber's English class. It was me, I think Emil Abraham, and one or two other dudes. We all picked the lucky one to read.
Yeah, shout out. Say as many names as possible that listeners like probably won't know. No offense to Emil or Miss Weber or whatever, but
Uh,
right. So Ryan and
it was a good book.
I guess also before we get into it, Ryan and I have been friends for a long, long time. Like probably over 10 years now. You and I have been friends. So this podcast is testing our friendship. We live on different coasts now, and this we are testing whether or not we can survive um, these various takes. Essentially, you and I differ a lot
A lot.
in opinions on movies. Um, we agree on a whole lot, but where we differ, it can get intense. So I am praying that that doesn't happen too soon, so that people, worry I'm gonna, uh, you know, I don't know, call in threats to your place of work or something like that. Ryan and I are friends. We've been friends for a long time. If we go at each other, just know that. All right, you want to get into the notebook?
Let's do it.
Let's book some notes. Okay, so we begin with some imagery of this river bathed in a sunset, some emotive plunking of the piano. The scenery is very nice. It's very picturesque. It's very pretty. I think it sets the tone very well. And it's, I guess it can be construed as like a pretty saccharine to serious opening to a movie. But I don't know. I kind of forgive the drama given the subject, and it seems very intentional. It does not seem, overly corny. If anything, kind of, I found myself thinking as this like opening happened. I wish movies nowadays were sometimes less tongue in cheek and just more sincere right off the bat. Um, we also get our first glimpse here of well, spoilers for the Notebook. We're just going to talk through it, so we know there's like a twist that happens in this movie. We're just gonna say it. We also in this opening scene get our first glimpse of an older woman who we will later learn is Allie. um, Ryan, do you have any strong thoughts or feelings on just like the first opening salvo of the Notebook?
I agree that the opening shots are beautiful and quite memorable, and I think between the imagery and the score, it sets the stage well for the tone and mood of the movie. As you said, sincere, taking itself seriously. I have no hot takes regarding that opening.
Fair enough. We cut to Noah pretty much immediately. And again, this is Noah and Allie. These older folks are Noah and Allie. The movie waits a little while to tell you that, but we just want to talk about the movie in its full context. So sorry if you have never seen the film and are spoiled, but sorry, stop listening then. Uh, so Noah starts narrating, which I usually kind of dislike as a plot device in movies. I kind of forgive it when it's something that is based on a book, as long as it's, used within with moderation, because sometimes it can get kind of annoying when films overdo it. Um, but it's based on a novel, so I kind of expected a degree of narrating. Um, Noah is swaggering through this retirement home. He's, clearly the big man on campus. All the ladies are throwing their depends off at him as the second they see him coming. Um, he comes in. The orderlies are referring to him as Duke, and this is just to kind of obscure his real identity as like a twist later. He goes in to read to Allie as a sort of service. She, we learn, is afflicted with dementia. Tearjerker incoming. And they resume a reading that has already been in progress. And Noah is telling a story about a young man that we will later learn is him, played by Ryan Gosling, and a younger Allie, played by a delightful Rachel McAdams. And we kind of set the stage for what is going to be one of the most iconic romantic films of the last 20 years. Ryan, thoughts on the opening uh, in the retirement home?
I too am not typically a fan of narration. I normally view it as a storytelling crutch that rarely works or is necessary. In this film, I don't mind it because it is part of the story, right? It is the titular notebook, which ultimately is pivotal to the relationship between these two characters and the ultimate arc of the movie. Um, it's a brief introduction, but I do think James Garner, the actor who plays Duke, the older version of Noah, is quite likable and charming in this brief introduction. He also has a nice voice for narration. Um, I'm glad that they don't drag out this sequence too much, set at the retirement home or nursing home. Uh, you know, if this film was made today, we could talk about this more later, there could be a version of this movie that is, 2 hours and 20 minutes or 2.5 hours, and everything is just dragged out more. I don't think that is ultimately necessary to this story. I like that you're introduced to the characters and the world relatively quickly. It also makes sense because at this point in the movie, we're not supposed to know who they are yet, their relationship. So this sets up the romance without giving too much away. Though I am curious to talk about, um, how obvious you think they do or don't make it that these two characters are ultimately going to be Noah and Allie.
That's a good shout. I guess the reason that I kind of just blew right past it is that just growing up, before I even watched the film, I through cultural osmosis,
Same.
I knew it already. So I'm sure that a young person who's maybe not as familiar with like the language of cinema, um, not to sound pretentious or anything, because like there's no reason that at a young age, or even at our age, if you're not familiar with storytelling tropes or whatever, if I'm sure that if someone who maybe hasn't seen a lot of stuff watches this and learns of the twist naturally as the movie unveils it, I'm sure there are people out there who were mind blown, and more power to them. I also like that you point out this movie kind of chugs along. It
Mm-hmm.
is it is 2 hours. It's not like a lean 90 minutes or anything, but it really does not let up once it starts going. Like, continuing on here, boom, right after they commence their reading or resume their reading, and maybe like what feels like 2 minutes into the movie, we're at a carnival. We're watching Gosling court McAdams. It's kind of a love at first sight situation for him. He immediately gets shot down as she goes, gallivanting off with her friends and with other guys. Um, they're making eyes at each other a little bit, which Gosling takes as a sign. So he runs up onto the Ferris wheel to introduce himself a second time. I wrote here that Noah, young Noah, is kind of a dickhead. Like this is the move. This is a move that kind of only works if you're as handsome as Ryan Gosling and as charismatic. Do you know what I mean? Like he's reprimanded, he's hanging off the Ferris wheel. He basically threatens to kill himself if McAdams does not agree to go on a date with him. It's this word is kind of overused today, but it's toxic, right? It's insane behavior. Um, I guess I wrote here that McAdams does look kind of incredible, so I get why he's kind of obsessed. Um, but their dynamic is objectively kind of, for lack of a better word, toxic right from the get go. McAdams pulls his pants down. So now their pattern of like specific flirting is set immediately in this interaction. It's so, I mean, I'm hyperbolizing a little bit for the sake of humor, but it's interesting. It's like he threatens to kill himself and then she pulls his pants down. So it's like I don't know. It's the perfect couple, right? He's threatening to do self-harm right away. She like gets off on humiliating him. What could possibly go wrong? What do you think about the carnival, Ryan?
Oh, I have thoughts.
Go ahead.
One, this is a weird meet cute. It's the classic, guy sees girl across the room and is immediately smitten. Now, Rachel McAdams is very charming, so I can understand it. Um, Number two, I love a good carnival scene. And I do feel like this is a trope where we see people either on first dates at carnivals or meet each other at carnivals. I feel like a lot of romantic set pieces are set at carnivals, but I'm always happy to see it. I don't know why. I just love seeing a good carnival set piece in a movie. Uh, Number three, hear me out.
Mm-hmm.
Is this scene funnier if when they're on the Ferris wheel, McAdams also pulls down his underwear and we just see his ass and he's
Okay,
hanging
his
there,
ass. I thought,
ass. Well, it
okay.
would it would be a little funny if
I
you cut to the front,
Yeah, I was like,
you
you
just
want
saw
him
him
to go
hanging
full
out,
hog right
hanging
away?
out.
Um, I guess it's maybe objectively funnier in like a sophomoric way if you're seeing booty cheek, but I don't know. I feel like because I feel like that might be a bridge for the reality of the movie. I feel like it might be
Mm-hmm.
a bridge too far, like in that time period, to like fully pants someone is probably a little wild. Um,
Some nice parkour from Gosling's character.
That's true. That's true. I mean, I guess I agree with you that like a good carnival. I mean, carnivals are just they're such cinematic um things at their core. Like just visually, they're so interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So I never have qualms with movies that like do a bunch of stuff at carnivals. I think it works in romance. I think it works in horror. Um, I'm trying to think of like recent carnival scenes that really kind of grabbed me. The first thing that came to mind was I saw the TV Glow. I think there's some fun carnival business going on there.
Good pull.
Um, Carnivals are dynamic, man, and they are kind of romantic. I don't know. Have you ever been on a date to a carnival? It's nice. It's
I
cute.
think so.
Yeah. Um, so pretty soon after this, we see the two run into each other again on the street. Gosling apologizes for his brashness and he further spits some game to her. Um, and she's kind of playing coy. She's not really taken with him right away, totally. It's this cute, like, will they, won't they, for half a second. And I wrote again that, like, if Gosling wasn't so charming and attractive, this would be just like full on creep shit. Like his eyes are crazy as he's talking about how bad he needs this woman, and she's like taunting him and doing like denying him the date that she had agreed to go on because it was under duress. That just tantalizes him even further. And I'm poking fun, but their chemistry, the Gosling McAdams chemistry, I know much was made about whether or not they actually got along on set. Um, I haven't looked into that further. I think I just know kind of the legend of them not really getting along as well as you'd think. Correct me if I'm wrong there, but their on-screen chemistry to me is apparent right away here. Like, uh, let me know your thoughts there.
You are correct that they supposedly did not get along on set, though they ultimately did date for a few years. So there clearly was legitimate chemistry there. And in some ways, maybe it was reminiscent of the chemistry of the characters that tend to, be combative at times, but, ultimately very passionate. Um, this scene is fine. I'm with you. I think a lot of Gosling's attempts at flirting and seduction could easily come off as weird and a little creepy, a little crazy, but because he's handsome, because there's just something about him as an actor that pulls you in, I think you're willing to go along with it. And because McAdams is a good actor, she also manages to sell it enough that you can suspend your disbelief. Um, and I do like the setup of them walking um along, a quiet street late at night, no one around. I thought that was a cool idea for a setting.
Yeah, and then we cut to Gosling and his homeboy. They go on a double date, or rather, Gosling and McAdams end up on a double date arranged by Gosling's friend, I believe, right? If I'm remembering
Mm-hmm.
correctly. It seems like Noah has been like doing further reconnaissance on her a little bit, and that McAdams didn't know he would be there when she showed up. Um, they go to a movie together, the group, and Gosling is still just like eyeing her like a piece of meat. um, Afterwards, they walk together while their respective friends fuck off. I guess he stared her into submission throughout the course of the movie, and she was like, "Fine, I'll go home with you." And this is a big key kind of stretch of the film here. On their walk, um, we learn a lot more about each of them individually, specifically McAdams. She reveals she's like a classic type A romance movie girl. She has all of her life planned out by her family and other high society people in her life. And so the implication is, of course, that he's going to chip through that. He asks her, "Well, yeah, but like, what do you do for fun?" Um, that classic kind of dichotomy there with these two. Um, this is also where in order to kind of connect with her or appear down to earth, he starts laying in the middle of the street. I guess, in a way to try to like encourage Rachel McAdams to stop and smell the roses or like live to the beat of her own drum. It's weird. I don't really like that.
Nope.
Well, I think it's gross just to like lay in the middle of the road. I have a thing about germs, and I think that's fucking gross, even in olden times. Um, this would not work on me if a girl did it to me in an effort to like be cute and quirky. Nor is it a move I would ever use on a girl. It's just like I don't know. I couldn't get over it. Like I was just the immediate thought I had was it's gross down there. Don't do that. Um, and then we also learn about Gosling. We learn about Rachel McAdams's hobbies here. She says she likes to paint. So of course it's going to be this push and pull of like, are you going to follow a dream that you have that's maybe more creative, or are you going to do what your parents say? And a, they have this sweet moment. She joins him there on the ground. A car comes, so they get the heck out of Dodge. And then immediately they go back into the street to slow dance. It's, this scene is cute. We just said how much chemistry we think these two have. I don't see why the scene needs to go on for as long as it does and to have as many kind of facets as it does. Um, we complimented the movie on not really dragging his feet, but here I wrote like, why is Gosling lobbing all of his moves over the fence all at once to try to get into her pants? It's like, I'm gonna ask her about her life. I'm gonna seem like a cool, down to earth dude. I'm gonna lay in the street. I'm gonna slow dance in the street. It's like you need to play it a little bit cooler, dude. In my opinion, I don't know, Ryan. I feel like I'm losing my mind just thinking about how kind of strange some of the aspects of this initial connection are. Tell me you feel the same way to a degree.
Yeah, I mean the entire laying in the street. Number one, you're right. It is just gross. Also dangerous. Also, I really don't. I guess it shows that he, is adventurous and that he's quirky and that he's not like any other guy she's met. But to me, him laying in the road, it does prove all those things, but in a negative way, not in a positive way. This is not a, oh, cool, look at him. This is a, what are you doing moment. I didn't find it, romantic or charming or sweet. Um, the slow dancing in the road, I get that a little bit more. That could have worked if they had just gone to that a little bit sooner. But I agree, this scene does meander a little bit. And maybe it's supposed to because the characters themselves are, meandering and, having this, awkward, but ultimately, supposedly romantic, meet cute. They're starting to get to know one another. We're seeing their feelings strengthen for one another. But yeah, I would not consider this one of my favorite scenes of the movie.
Yeah, fair enough. I agree with you there. I feel like maybe it could have benefited from just like, I hate to sound like, let's just get this shit over with. I don't mean that, but like I feel like choose one or the other, either lay in the street or do the slow dancing in the street. I was just like, we're kind of repeating similar beats here. Um, but so after this, we briefly cut back to the old people, the old Noah and Allie. Um, just as a move that I think this movie actually does quite well throughout is using this kind of framing device um, as like an effective way to do interstitials to
Mhm.
jump us through time very easily, very conveniently. Um, so I do give it credit for that. Um, we cut to this like montage of young Noah and young Allie's kind of whirlwind romance. They ride bikes, they eat ice cream, they're doing, summer loving, they're having a blast. I noted specifically this little sequence of them with the ice cream because McAdams is just eating this man's face with this ice cream. And it's not even in a gross way. I just thought this was like, this is another point for like their individual acting abilities and their chemistry. Because I was just like, I thought that like this specific kind of representation of their uh puppy love, it's like adorable, it's quite erotic to a degree, the way that she's like just kind of devouring him. I don't know. It's just it's moments like this that I think make this film kind of stand out from its um other, I guess, contemporaries or even like compatriots in the genre. What do you think about this quick little montage here?
Yeah, I do think you're right. She certainly goes for it. I don't know, maybe she was just really hungry and, wanted what
Maybe.
what little bits of ice cream were on his face. Yeah, I mean, to our point earlier about how this movie um tends to move, relatively quickly. It's well paced. I'm glad that we get, a quick, entertaining montage, rather than having these scenes, dragged out and seeing, 3 or 4 dates where we see them going on the bikes and it's a 5 minute
Mhm.
scene. And then we see them eating the ice cream and it's a 5 minute scene. I like that we get through this part pretty quickly. I think it, makes these moments more entertaining.
Right, and without lessening them because the strength of the performances is so apparent. We slow down for a second so that Allie can meet Noah's dad. I really like the character of Noah's dad. When we meet him, he's like the all of the visual markers of this guy are very salt of the earth, very working class. But Noah is like reading poetry with him when she arrives. It's like a kind of sweet um blend of like traditional masculinity and like a more sensitive side. I think it's a really interesting kind of character, particularly for the time. Um, I really like. We'll talk about it a little more throughout the course of the movie. It's not something that's like a keystone necessary. Well, maybe people will disagree with this. I don't think the Noah's dad relationship is like a keystone of the film necessarily, but it is a very sweet kind of um jewel in the crown of the Notebook, in my opinion. I really like this character, and I really like what he ends up representing in relation to the people around him. The dad invites Allie in for dinner, and they're having pancakes at dinner time. So fun, so quirky. Um, it's it's an interesting introduction to this character who, I think it's lost in the overall kind of cultural memory of the Notebook. Uh, I may be totally off base because, I'm not of I'm not of the generation or of like the target audience, the primary uh, uh gender for who this movie is, aimed at. Um, but I think people don't talk about Noah's dad. He's kind of a cool dude. I like this introduction. What do you think?
Yeah, he's a very likable character. Very quickly endears himself. I like his dynamic with Allie. I do like the pancakes bit. And I feel like in romance movies, it's a very common trope to have the um damaged relationship with a parent and a child, whether it's abusive or they forbid the romance. And we see some of those tropes more with Allie's parents, which I'm sure
Right.
we'll talk about in a few scenes. But I was really pleasantly surprised in the moment when I was watching this to see that, hey, Noah's dad is actually a really good supportive parent, a nice guy. He's immediately welcoming to Allie. It just makes for a refreshingly normal, good parent.
Yeah, I mean, there is an inverse to that trope too, where maybe it's just because like maybe it's just because you and I both have seen so many different movies. So like
Mm-hmm.
you could almost argue that like a, a lot of things feel like tropes when you just like watch a ton of stuff. Um, but there's also kind of an inverse of that trope where like there's the parent who, is supportive and sweet, and they come in for like one real solid scene of advice giving. You know what I mean?
Right.
There's that aspect too. Um, but I think when it's done well, and you can't really deny it. Um, so after this little meeting of the um, meeting of the minds between Allie and Noah's dad, we see Noah and Allie at the beach. They talk about reincarnation briefly, and McAdams has this pretty terrible, in my opinion, impression of a bird, which does not dampen his infatuation with her for whatever reason, probably because she looks like Rachel McAdams. Um, they have another cute, you know, connection here. I don't, I don't, I don't love this scene necessarily. Aside from, we do get what turns out to be one of the iconic lines of the film here: the "If you're a bird, I'm a bird." It's a cute line. It's delivered well. But this scene is kind of in a movie that again I generally like. I am kind of surprised that like we're doing the montage, we're meeting the dad, and then we're doing like another beach date. I was like, couldn't this have been part of the montage we just saw? I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, it's a nice looking beach. But I don't find the "if you're a bird, I'm a bird" line uh, all that special. Um, and I guess it's nice to see these characters continue to banter and be in love, because eventually we do get to the point where they are separated and where they come into conflict, so that there's only going to be a finite amount of time before the honeymoon phase is over. But I agree, the scene doesn't totally work. I don't think it's quite as romantic and moving as it wants to be, or maybe it just didn't work for me in the way that it works for others.
Yeah, I totally agree with you there. It's like I I know the line is iconic, but if I'm comparing this moment and the ice cream moment, for example, that we just talked about, one, I'm like, without even any real dialogue, it's just so much more romantic and intimate and like I don't know, it's just like I
You just love that ice cream bit.
I do. I do. Maybe maybe I'm just learning something about myself that I
Want some
don't
ass cream?
that I don't want to confront. Anyway, we go to a little hoedown that's occurring in Noah's part of the woods. McAdams is slumming it with all of the yokels, dancing up a storm with Noah's dad.
Accurate.
Um, and then I hope yokel's not like a that's not like a slur, right? We could say that.
Canceled.
The Simpsons say it. When has The Simpsons ever done anything controversial? Um, and we see them go on a rope swing into a lake. Um, this is, I wrote here that this is the only time I think Gosling, I think he's making a choice to, as Noah, put on a southern accent, like an exaggerated southern accent.
Mhm.
I'm trying to give him the benefit of the doubt there, but I wrote like this is the only time I think that Gosling attempts a southern accent when he goes, "Get in the water, get in the water." Um,
Maybe it was the first day of shooting.
maybe, yeah, maybe, and then he abandons it after that. I don't know. I Gosling is a good enough actor where I'm willing to bet like this is him making a decision to have Noah do like an exaggerated southern accent because I
Right.
want Gosling to be a good infallible a lot of the time. I haven't seen a lot of stuff where I think he's bad. I don't think I've seen anything where I think he's bad. But Noah also teaches Allie how to drive in this little stretch of the movie. Um, I like the part of this montage. I think it's a good transition, like you kind of alluded to earlier. This transition that's like, okay, now the honeymoon phase of the relationship is giving way a little bit. They have these fights that are really intense. We don't even really learn about like the subject of a lot of the fights that are kind of um given to us here. They're just like this is how they fight, and when they fight, they go big. Um, it's a nice detail, I think, because it makes the relationship feel more relatable. Like it's not like a romance movie where there are a lot of romance movies. This is maybe more common in rom-coms, but there are a lot of romantic movies where the only big fights that the couples have are because of like um very easily solved like misunderstandings, right?
Hmm.
It's not a fight that like you'd have necessarily in a real life relationship that like actually recurs and like is a point of contention continuing. And I don't know, I like this little detail in the Notebook. It makes the relationship feel more real. um what do you think about this whole little kind of stretch of the film here? I kind of compounded some things together: the hoedown, the get in the water, the driving, the fighting. But like I said, the movie moves along at a kind of a breakneck pace. So if you have any thoughts about any of that, go ahead.
the hoedown just felt so random. I guess it's another opportunity to see Allie bonding with Noah's father, uh, Noah either introducing or including her in the neighborhood party. But it does feel a little uh, like something in a different movie. Um, but it's, fun enough and it's brief enough. I agree. I think it's good that we see them bickering and fighting without devoting too much time to it. It does make the relationship feel more authentic. But the movie also doesn't, get distracted with, subplots or, an insignificant argument that ultimately isn't going to mean anything. We see glimpses of the fighting so that we know that it's happening. But as you said, the movie continues to move along pretty quickly. Also enjoyed seeing the tree rope. I've never had that experience of, jumping into a lake or a pond on a rope. I've always wanted to do that, but is that a thing in real life or is that just in the movies?
It
It's
is
in
a
Grown
thing.
Ups.
It's a it's in the movie Grown Ups, you
Yeah,
mean?
the Grown Ups one is great.
Yeah, of course you would say that. I it is a thing. I I feel like I remember at least once when I was super little doing something like that. It's a thing.
It's on
Yeah.
my bucket list.
Wow. What an incredible life you plan to lead. Uh,
Very adventurous.
so you're anti hoedown, but you're pro rope swing.
Correct.
All right.
Well, I
Spoken
don't
like
mind. I would happily participate in a
I was gonna
hoedown.
say, spoken like somebody who hasn't been to a true hoedown.
Yeah,
Um,
I'll
so
add it to the list.
yeah, add it to the bucket list. Um, anyway, Noah drops Allie off at her place, and uh, they give him a little bit more depth, but in this initial introduction, this like quite literally mustache twirling dad insists on
In the
meeting
robe.
Noah. Yeah, in his robe. This dude, at least at first glance, is just like a straight up cartoon character. We cut to this big dinner or luncheon at the family of McAdams's character. Um, I noted that I guess it's period accurate, but I was like, all of the staff is black. That's I was like that going. This is like kind of alluding to a weird facet of the movie that the film just really isn't it's not that kind of movie. I get it, but it's just like not interested in acknowledging that at all. Like
Nope.
throughout any part of the film. Um, it becomes apparent at this luncheon that McAdams's family doesn't super approve of the coupling here between Noah and Allie. Um, this is also where Noah learns some key information that Allie is, in fact, not going to school anywhere nearby. She plans to go to school all the way in New York. Her parents um, clearly are hoping that this relationship fizzles out come the end of the summer. Um, Ryan, do you have any opinions on this new gang of characters that we meet? McAdams's parents.
I actually liked this scene quite a bit. It's still a little predictable, a little, you know, um, not subtle, but I did enjoy the twist that ultimately, while the father is not particularly fond of Noah, he ultimately just views this as a phase, a fling. He's not that concerned with it. Whereas it's the mother who is actually actively against the relationship and Noah. The others at the table clearly look down on Noah. They're not particularly impressed with him, but there's no open, mocking, pointing, and laughing. For the most part, they kind of smile and nod and move on with the conversation. And it's the mom who is uh ultimately the one with the swipe. So I like
True,
that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess to the movie's credit, it's not super. We made a little bit of fun at the visual of McAdams's dad, like sitting there twirling his mustache at his fucking plantation, but
Yes.
but yeah, like like the guests are pretty respectful overall. It's not like a um there is a scene later on in the film that is a little bit more overtly this, but no one at this luncheon is like, you're a poor piece of crap and you're not good enough. Well, they wouldn't talk like that.
Boy.
Yeah, boy, you're a dear boy, you're a poor piece of crap and you're not there's nothing like that. I don't know what accent I was attempting there. The one that was stuck in my head was the dean from Community talking about the cotillion, and I was trying to like marry that with something else in my head. But so I'm just gonna blaze right by that. You and I did a lot of theater in our day. Accent work was never something I was super
I
good at.
don't give a dean.
I don't give a dean. So later this same evening, or I think it's the same evening, Noah and Allie start to get hot and heavy outside of his place. They decide to avoid any eavesdropping ears, though, by going to an old abandoned house. And I wrote house. Noah uses the word plantation, unfortunately. Uh, just an uncomfortable reality that this film breezes by every single time it's about to come up. Um, so Noah fantasizes about building them a life together in this house. um, and she kind of joins him in waxing poetic about this fantasy. It's a cute moment. It works for me. These like lovebirds daydreaming about their infinite possibilities, uh, to to be birthed from the power of their love. It's cute. Despite the fact that it's occurring at a plantation, um, the the interpersonal stuff works for me here. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a little convenient that there's this nice big house that's just dirty and run down enough that no one wants it, but it's still in good enough condition that you can go in there and fool around and spend the night without having to worry about rats or rubble falling on you. But it makes for a romantic spot. Yeah, and it's a nice little scene. Well lit. It is a cool locale despite the history behind it.
Yeah. This is also where they get uh intimate for the first time. It's in I have a question mark here. Um because I've always been unclear here. Well, first of all, this is another like them laying in the middle of the road. I like am revulsed by some of the aspects of this scene. They lay a singular blanket down
That's
on
enough.
this dirty ass floor. They light some candles. Okay, candles are fine. I would be worried about dust, spiders, splinters, all of this shit, rubble. You said, I, you know, I'm not. I don't want to get gross or graphic. I'm not saying that it's not okay to get freaky on the floor or furniture, but this is like an old ass, dusty, crusty house, and I don't think it's the move. Um, I'll say that I like the awkwardness of their first kind of attempt at intimacy. It feels kind of real, um, and, and like an accurate depiction of maybe two young people who don't have a lot of experience in that regard. She's super talky and nervous, and he's kind of just going super quiet, out of nerves of his own. They have to take a breath, take a beat, and this is where he first admits that he loves her. Um, Cynically, you could say that that's a way for him to just be like, "There, I said I love you. All right, so just let's keep going and do the thing." But I think he means it. She says, "I love you back," and I think I don't think they ever actually even really do the deed, right? I don't think there's ever any. For lack of a better term, um, I don't I don't think any God, what should what's the metaphor I can use that isn't gross as shit? Um, I don't think the train ever even arrives at the station, right? They get cock blocked by Finn, Noah's friend, who rushes in and says that the cops have been sent out looking for Allie. Um, Maybe you can provide me some clarity here, as well as your opinions on this uh, sometimes gross, sometimes realistic and sweet sex scene.
Yeah, I thought it was sweet. I did like the bit where she's talking. Yeah, he's clearly a little nervous. You know, it's romantic, but not so perfect that it feels, inauthentic. Um, I think you're right. I don't think we ever get confirmation that they rock the Casbah. Um, unless it happens off screen and we're supposed to assume that, but
No, I think
I feel like we
we're
would have
right.
seen it or they would have
Yeah,
acknowledged it if that was supposed to be
I because
understood.
I think, not to interrupt you, I think there is a part much later on, spoiler alert, when they do hook up, that she says that's what I've been missing all this time,
Yes, you're
which
right.
is an we'll get there, but if a girl said that to me after the fact, not to get too graphic, I'm like, I am taking that compliment to the bank for the rest of my fucking life.
Or Marsden. We're going to talk a lot about
We'll
him
talk
later.
about Marston. Well, he wrote a letter for Brian Peck, didn't he?
I think so.
So get cucked, Marsden. We'll get to him. We'll get to him. Finn reveals that the cops have been sent out to try to locate Allie, so they don't get to really have their conjugal visit. We cut briefly to older Noah and Allie, um, as kind of like I said earlier, like an effective interstitial um, to get us back into the olden days, but like just a few hours or days later. We cut to Allie waking up, presumably the next morning. Very quick turnaround here. Her parents are basically shuttling her off early from their vacation home to presumably New York or the Northeast, where she's going to go to school. Um, I wrote here that Allie snaps at this nice black maid for no fucking reason. Just like the racial dynamics of that are pretty weird again. Um, Allie makes a pit stop at the lumber yard to try to notify Noah of what is happening. Noah works at a lumber yard. I don't think maybe we didn't specify that. So she goes to his place of work to try to notify him, but he's not there at the time. He's dropping off some timber, by which I mean literally doing that. He's not taking, well, maybe he's taking a shit. We don't really know. But and then I wrote here that Finn only barely agrees to share the message that Allie wants to give to Noah. I wrote here that Finn, don't do this. If you're that wishy-washy about it, you're a bad friend. Like if I was madly in love with the girl, you and I have known each other for a long time. If I had this like crazy puppy love with this girl that I was in danger of never seeing again, and she was relying on you to give me the message, and you were that wishy-washy about it, I'd kill you in your sleep. I'd
I'd
be
kill you dead.
I'd be so mad at you, dude. Um, what do you think about this kind of do you find this convoluted that she tries to go see him and he's not there? I mean, he works at a lumber yard, so I'm sure he's like making a delivery or something. Do you find this kind of too cliche, or what do you think? What do you think about this whole bit? I think it works fine, but
It's fine. It is a bit of a cliche. And I did like the, I guess, unofficial breakup scene with Allie and Noah. And so I would have liked to have seen another conversation with them where they say their goodbyes, but I get that for the plot, it's probably juicier, more suspenseful if they don't actually see each other before she leaves. The Finn character is interesting. He's in some pivotal moments, but we don't get a lot of time with him, or a ton of backstory, which is fine. But I do agree. I think in that moment, clearly the right thing to do as a friend is to relay the message. I don't understand why he's so reluctant to do so. Um, I guess it did, add some extra oomph to the scene because I was on the edge of my chair for a minute there, wondering if he was actually going to give the message. Um, but it works fine. It's a scene that maybe could have been, actually, it's one of the few scenes that I think maybe could have been dragged out a little bit more, that maybe they could have um, done something a little bit different and maybe it would have been more effective. But as is, it works fine.
Yeah, and you make a good point. I think I skipped over the unofficial kind of breakup scene that you were talking about. So let me backtrack just a little bit because when they are about to have sex for the first time and they get interrupted, Noah rushes Allie home to her parents. Her parents are pissed. Noah tries to explain um, that it's not Allie's fault, and the parents are pretty respectful to Noah's face in this scene, but this is the scene that I kind of alluded to earlier where they do kind of have it out with their daughter in the study, and um, Noah can totally hear them through the walls. It's one
Right.
of those where like they really aren't doing a whole lot to mask their voice, and I feel like if they lived in this house, well, I guess it's their summer house, their summer plantation, but I feel like if they lived here this long, they'd know that he could hear them. But this is where her parents kind of make their true feelings known. They straight up call him trash, which is clearly a dagger to his heart, to Noah's heart. We see he can overhear them. He pieces out, and Allie has this interesting moment that will come into play later where she makes a dig at her own parents for not being in like real true love. That'll come into
Mm-hmm.
play a little bit later. Um, but yes, this is kind of their unofficial. It's an official breakup, I think, because Noah makes this like sacrifice of like breaking them up for each of their own good. Like he's breaking up for the good of the both of them because he overheard this dramatic conversation about her being forbidden from dating him. Um, I I'm glad that you called it out because I skipped over it by accident, but it is a good scene because I really like the way that McAdams and Gosling play this. It's kind of the stereotypical scene where the couple has to break up for some reason. You have to get to
Mm-hmm.
that point in the romance movie or in the rom-com or what have you somehow, because otherwise the movie just is not going to be the length of a movie, right? So the performances really sell it, and I like when McAdams starts kind of wailing on him here. It
Mm-hmm.
looks like she's hitting him pretty hard. I This is another moment where I kind of like how fiery their romance is when we get to see it play out in all of the um in more nuanced ways than just the lovey-dovey stuff. Please elaborate on your thoughts there. I apologize for skipping over it the first time.
It's a really well acted scene. I completely agree. I think um it's one of the, I think, better acting moments for them in a movie with a lot of great, moments for McAdams and Gosling. But I totally feel the apprehension, but feeling of necessity. It's a breakup where neither party wants to break up, right? And you're totally right that this has to happen. The movie has to come up with a reason to break them up. Um, but I think again, it feels authentic. It doesn't feel too contrived or um, too cliched. Um, and it's a sad moment because you're so invested in this relationship thanks to the performances. Um, And it makes that, subsequent departure of McAdams, where they don't get to see each other and really don't get to reconcile before she leaves, all the more effective.
Right. I agree with you there. The only caveat that I really have is like it is kind of goofy that that uh it, it is kind of goofy that he hears everything from the
Yes.
foyer or whatever. Like, eh, there's no real reason. Well, I guess they don't want to make Allie's parents seem like that, like assholes to that degree. Like,
Right.
it would be kind of different if they just said it in front of his face. They are trying to like maintain decorum. Um, but yes, I'm glad that you caught that. So to clarify for those listening, they have their attempt at intimacy. They get interrupted by Finn. They have this moment where uh, Allie's parents chew her out. She chews them out. This breakup happens that we just commented on. And then Allie wakes up, learns she's being shipped off, tries to connect with Noah, doesn't get there quite in time. And Finn, at this moment, the worst friend in the world, barely agrees to actually relay the message to his friend who's clearly in love with this broad. Um, so after that, Finn does in fact tell Noah what's up, and Noah books it out of there. He's in a tizzy, but he gets to Allie's place too late. We get this small montage of Noah beginning to write letters to Allie. This will be very key later. Um, he writes her one letter every day for a year, and this is another moment where I'm like, it's a good narrative device. It's because I think the way that it gets incorporated later is affecting emotionally. Um, but clearly, if you're an audience member watching, and if this is meant to be a twist later, I don't think it's a very like well kept one. Like, obviously, you're sitting here and you're going, "Oh well, we just learned that her parents do not like this fucking guy. So duh, one or both of them is gonna like squirrel away these letters the color purple style. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Oh, good reference.
exactly. I mean, that's exactly what's about to happen. Um, so
That'd be a good crossover.
that would be an awful. I do not, in no universe, do I need to see the characters of the color purple interact with these people. Noah, you're rebuilding. What are you rebuilding, Noah? Let's not talk about it. Um, so I guess because he's not getting any responses back, uh, Finn and Noah enlist in the army together. We get this uh, brief, but kind of it's kind of a stunning departure from the rest of the tone of the movie. It's like the briefest of war scenes where Finn and Noah are deployed in Europe, and there's like this tiny little battle sequence where Noah witnesses Finn get absolutely fucking domed, like just totally murked. It's I guess it's sad. As an audience, we don't know a whole lot about Finn, but clearly this is like the only person, at least, well, we know Allie and we know Noah's dad, but the only like contemporary Noah's age that he's kind of connected with is Finn. So through the language of the film, we understand this is very sad for Noah, but I didn't feel personally attached to Finn. Um, Ryan, you're shaking your head. Give me the lowdown on the letters, the war, Finn, everything in between.
The letters is fine. It's going to come back. Um, of course, they're going to keep it from her. Of course, she's eventually going to find out. But whatever. The war scene sucks. First of all, it looks like it was shot in just a random field somewhere. There's like what, like
Mo-
10.
I hate to interrupt you, but most wars happen in random fields somewhere.
Well, it didn't look like a battlefield. Looked like it could have been my backyard. There are like what, like 10, 15 guys just, marching through this field. Um, and then we get like a what, 30-second battle sequence where this character who we barely know dies. I'm not saying the scene has to be gory,
I
but
was
it
good.
just
So did you? Sorry, go ahead.
no, you go ahead.
No, no, no. I want to hear you finish your thoughts before I lay into you.
Okay. So it doesn't feel I don't feel anything for this character.
No.
It doesn't even look like he died. It looks like he just like jumped to the ground and all of a sudden he's gone. If you're gonna show Noah at war or serving overseas, either come up with a good like montage. It doesn't, we don't have to spend a whole, scene there, but show some sort of montage, or just do a time jump and have Noah at the cemetery saying, he died in combat. I just think this scene is really poorly shot and looks bad
I
and
I
is super rushed and
I don't
ineffective.
I don't disagree with you that it's not particularly effective, but I I don't know what the happy medium is, because I don't think just smash cut. Um, Noah had enlisted and his friend died, and like we don't see any of it. I don't think that works. But I also don't think that like turning into fucking 1917 for 30 minutes benefits the movie either. I don't know what the answer is. I imagine that because I haven't read the source material. I
Mm-hmm.
imagine this plays out with a little bit more room to breathe in the book. Um, I have to imagine that it was kind of a a growing pain of adapting a novel, right? But
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what the answer is. I don't think either of your propositions necessarily work, but I don't disagree with your central premise. Um, will you accept that?
Yes, I don't know
Okay.
if either of my propositions would work, but if you're gonna shoot the scene as it's written in the script, there's got to be something that resembles like an actual explosion. At the very least, can you show me like the bullet in the guy's chest, a
All
little
right,
bit
all
more
right,
dirt on him? I
that's
just
fair.
think it looked like it was rushed in a day.
All right, I don't disagree with you there. It's see, as far as like the worst looking scenes in the movie, this is it,
The
in my
director
opinion.
clearly is not, going to be directing Saving Private Ryan anytime soon. That's not his strength. That's
Right.
okay.
Interestingly enough, maybe this is a good time to kind of, because this is kind of a hinge on which the movie kind of turns. So I do think it's interesting to point out though that at one point I think I read that Spielberg was looking at adapting this as kind of like a classic back when Spielberg was doing like grown up adult dramas. Now that, not that he doesn't do that now. He does
Mm-hmm.
things like The Post and the things of that nature. But at one point, Spielberg was interested in adapting this book into a film with, I believe, Tom Cruise as Noah. Am I remembering that correctly?
Cruise as Noah, and then I think at one point, I think this was after Spielberg had moved on. I read somewhere that Clooney was being courted to play Noah. I don't know who was directing that version or how far that got, but yeah, there was a time where I think there were some prominent directors and actors who saw potential in this movie.
It's interesting, and we can get into it later because I don't want to get lost in terms of like going through the actual plot here, but I wonder if Spielberg, someone who is, with all the peace and the love in the world to Nick Cassavetes, who did direct this movie. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. With all the peace and love in the world, he's no Steven Spielberg, right? And I wonder if the Notebook's kind of inspired and influenced a lot of, I think, lesser, in my opinion, romance movies that have come out since. I wonder if Spielberg does this as like a classic, um, like mature for everybody, take this seriously across the board Spielberg movie. I wonder if we get the kind of um the kind of barrage of, I don't want to say knockoffs, but the barrage of like Notebook adjacent stuff that has come out since. Do you get what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
It's an interesting thought experiment.
Yeah, I mean yeah, I mean this movie clearly inspired a lot of successors. I mean, not even just, other romances, but literally every Nicholas Sparks book that had been written was given a movie adaptation all of the sudden. Um, and I do wonder with Spielberg, is it looked at as more of a prestigious movie? Is it a
Yeah.
bigger? I mean, even if you look back, like The Notebook was a very successful movie, but looking back, I was surprised. I would have thought it would have made more money considering the following it has. Like, would it have been a bigger hit? Would it have been a more expensive movie with a more prestigious cast? I don't know. I'd be interested to see his version of that script.
Yeah, like and it's interesting too because there are a lot of like Spielberg elements, like
Mm-hmm.
classic Spielberg elements to the story itself, traveling in and out of different timelines. There's like the war element. We said earlier, I mean, he adapted Color Purple, of course, but like there's also the whole thing with the letters in that film.
Mm,
And but you're right. It's like I wonder if I wonder if Spielberg makes the movie, is it taken more seriously? Does it get like nominated for more serious awards, right?
right.
I don't know. We'll never know. We'll never know. I
You know whose
do
version I do want to see, but and you just made me think of this.
what?
Christopher Nolan. He would have a field day with the
Christopher
timelines.
Nolan's The Notebook. I've been on
Mm-hmm.
an I we cannot get too sidetracked. Um, but I've been on a little bit of a Nolan kick lately. I've been realizing that in my effort to not be an annoying film bro growing up, I kind of was being too anti Nolan. Like I loved The Dark Knight and um only kind of liked a lot of his other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But God, I saw the Interstellar re-release in IMAX and like everyone else in the world loved Oppenheimer and I loved Tenet when I got to see it in IMAX when they re-released Tenet and I'm just like fully Nolan pilled again. I do not think he would be a good choice for The Notebook. He is not famous for uh
Right. He's writing women.
yeah, exactly. I didn't want to say it because I do like him, but and I didn't want to be too mean, but yeah, like I don't think Allie comes out um
As
as
good in
fully
that
fledged
version.
even with source material to adapt. Um Anyway, speaking of Allie, we see what Allie is up to during wartime in this film. She spends some time in college, but then volunteers as a nurse. We are like fully doing war movie shit for a few scenes here. This is where Allie meets James Marsden. Everyone loves James
Mm-hmm.
Marsden, right? Um, he is one of her patients. He is a pretty charming dude right off the bat. It's hard not to like this character. Um, he is obviously Marsden, the actor, is like rom com royalty in a lot of respects. Like he is, well, Enchanted, I think, could be considered a rom com in a lot of respects, but like
And
Marsden
Sonic.
and Sonic, Marsden is pretty just like well liked and considered charming across the board, whether it is something like Sonic or I think he's phenomenal in Hairspray.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so he, like Gosling, carries a lot of just inherent charm. So after Marsden's character is recovered, he dreamily asks McAdams out, very smoldery, and we get a montage of their courtship very briefly. We learn that Marsden, like Allie, comes from wealth. Allie's parents like him a lot better. Um, we see the two of them at a jazz club with Allie's parents, and Marsden correctly assesses that she's kind of reserved, maybe a little bit, about marrying him because she has a defiant streak when it comes to um, her parents' wishes. Um, and then he very charmingly, very slyly reveals that, well, I already asked your parents' permission to marry you. They gave their blessing. Um, there's like a brief flash in her eye, we're told, um that is about, Allie thinking about her relationship with Noah. But I don't know. Personally, I think she accepts way too quickly for me to buy that she was really thinking about Noah in that moment. I wrote here, wow, she accepts the proposal so fast. Get fucking wrecked, you southern lumber carrying hick. Um, what do you think about the introduction of Marsden here and their little romance here, Allie and uh, the beloved James Marsden?
I think you're right on both accounts. I think Marsden is one of those actors that makes really every movie he's in better, whether it's as a lead character or a supporting role. Um, we've seen him play kind of dashing romantic lead. We've seen him play kind of comedic, kind of unpredictable guy. We've seen him play superhero.
Oh
Um,
gosh, yeah, Cyclops.
we've seen him play the cucked man. He's very handsome, very charismatic. I do agree that I, it's tough because on the one hand, I like that the movie doesn't devote too much time to their courtship, only because if they had spent, 20 minutes setting up their relationship, only to then go back to, Allie visiting Noah and
Right. Spoiler alert.
rekindling, spoiler alert,
Yeah.
rekindling that relationship, maybe you end up feeling like the Marsden character just isn't right now. I think the version we have of this movie, essentially, we get about as little of the Marsden character as we need in order for the plot to go along. They don't give that character a ton of time or space to get the development and layers that Noah and Allie do, which makes sense. Ultimately, it's not his story, it's theirs. Again, spoiler alert, ultimately, you know, they don't end up together. But I do wish there had been maybe a scene or a moment where we see them on their first date, where we see them talking, and maybe there's some allusion to Allie having been in a previous relationship, having had a first love, and trying to move on from that. Because I agree, in that moment when he proposes and she accepts, I wasn't totally sure how to interpret the moment. Are we supposed to think that it shows that she has really moved on? At one point, there's a shot where she looks like she's taking everything in. She's not sure how to respond. Are we supposed to gather that, oh, clearly she still has feelings for Noah and she's just settling for this guy? I don't know. Because we rush into that proposal so quickly, I think their relationship is a little bit murkier than I would have liked it to be at that point in the movie.
Yeah, I mean, well, so the narration explicitly tells us that, like, oh, she thought about Noah, but
Yeah.
this is a moment where, like, as talented as I think McAdams is, I don't fully believe that she's playing that in that moment, or like
Mm-hmm.
maybe they just don't like linger on her enough for me to believe that. Um, I mean, it's a delicate balance, right? Because obviously, as a viewer of the movie, this is not going to become a movie about how fucking dope Allie and James Marsden are, and they end up
No,
together and fuck Noah. Like, not
it's
literally
not a
fuck
love
him.
triangle movie.
Not
I don't think
yes,
they even
yeah,
try to
not
make
literally
you
fuck
think.
Noah, but like forget him. For that's a
Right.
different movie. That's Challengers. But I I don't roll your fucking eyes. Challengers is great.
I love challengers.
I do. One of my top 3 of the year probably.
Pass.
Anyway, anyway. But yeah, it's a delicate balance. I because when you cast somebody like Marsden, if you give the audience too much of someone with so much inherent charm,
Mm,
you run the risk of like turning them against Allie when she inevitably cheats on him, right? Or strays. So it's a balance that I think they strike well, but I don't disagree
mm-hmm.
that, maybe a little bit more um of the building blocks of their relationship could have been shown to us. Um just because both of them are so good, and I wouldn't mind seeing McAdams and Marsden be good in a scene together. You know what I mean? Um anyway, uh yeah. So we cut back to Noah, who is kind of reuniting with his dad after the war. His dad reveals that he sold his house in order to help Noah further his dream of buying the old plantation. Sorry, that's what they say. That's what it is. That's what it is. It's a plantation. Um, this scene, I noted it specifically because it kind of made me surprisingly emotional. I don't know. I just thought like it's such a small moment, but it's such a grand gesture. And the Noah's dad relationship is just so wholesome. Um, it's just I found it to be kind of understated but very thoughtful. And the two guys begin working on the house. I don't know. I was weirdly very moved by this. Um, it's I wanted to point it out specifically because I just know not that the rest of the movie is devoid of these kinds of emotions, but I just found it so interesting that that kind of stuck out to me. Do you have a take there at all, or you just want to barrel through?
It's a moving scene. I was honestly surprised that the dad wasn't dead yet, because you know it's coming. You know he's not going to make it to the end of the movie. And I thought for sure we'd see Noah come back from the war, come back to his hometown, and some neighbor would say, you didn't hear? I'm sorry, Noah. Your father, died a year ago or something. So I like that they at least gave us a little bit more time uh, to see their dynamic. I did like the idea of, him buying the home for Noah, helping him rebuild it. Um, yeah, I thought it was a really sweet moment too.
All right. All right, I'm glad to hear that. I thought you were gonna like call me well, no, you're not the kind of guy to be like, all right, pussy. But I thought you would like fully disagree and just be like, yeah, pass.
No, but
Um,
once that scene happens, then it's like, all right, he's gonna die in
oh
like
yeah,
in
yeah,
like a
he's gonna
scene or
bite it.
two. He's
Yeah.
done.
So Noah travels to get some sort of permit or blueprint and sees Allie walking down the street by happenstance. He forces his way off of the bus that he's on. He follows her to the restaurant that she's dining at, and he sees through the window that she is kissing Marsden. The implication is that he also notices the engagement ring, excuse me. And he does not even go inside because it's just so heartbreaking to see how badly he fumbled. 2004 Rachel McAdams. Rachel McAdams is still a total 10 out of 10, but I just mean like, you know what I mean. Um, do you know what I mean? Have we talked about this? Yeah, I think McAdams and Gosling and Marston for that matter, they're all just they're all just stunners in this movie. They all look real good. Gosling specifically once he gets all the facial hair going. No?
I don't like Gosling's beard. I think McAdams looks far better in some of her other movies. Marsden looks great. I'm with you on Marsden. But, before you brought up A Walk to Remember, this whole time I've just been thinking, is this movie better with, 2004 Mandy Moore in there? I
Oh,
don't
are you
know.
shitting me, dude?
Mandy Moore is hot.
Okay, but do you I
She's not as good of an actor, but
we
I don't
okay, I
know.
was going to say we began the episode by the way saying how we weren't going to be misogynistic and now we're just like talking about but like
We've been alluding to it the whole time.
I've been alluding to yeah, but I just said that all of them look great. And like I just think McAdams
McAdams is great.
she and
She's great.
with all the peace and the love to Mandy Moore, I like McAdams in more stuff than I like Mandy Moore in. And I I I just I'm not trying to get all objectifying I just think McAdams looks so good in this movie. She's just like I think it's a good casting decision. I think the hair and makeup and the wardrobe is very good. She seems like this very I totally see the that's this is a problem I have. I sound like I'm ranting to defend myself.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but a problem I have in a lot of films is like, and it goes both ways gender wise. When I have to buy into a love at first sight thing, I'm like, the man or woman we're talking about here has to just be like an embodiment of like beauty, gender non-specific beauty. You know what I mean? I think they capture that here. All right, that's all I'm trying to say. And I know that you're probably more of a McAdams in Mean Girls guy. I'm guessing.
Yeah,
I McAdams has always looked good. She will always look good. I think everybody in the universe agrees on that. That's all I'm trying to say. All right.
fair enough.
So Noah starts losing his fucking marbles. Um, he starts putting 110% into restoring the plantation with this like cosmic notion that it'll somehow bring Allie back to him. Um, we cut to the present day briefly at the old folks' home. Noah and Allie are settling in for lunch. We use this. This is the one time where I think the interstitial is kind of funny. Like using the retirement home as an interstitial is funny because we see them like settling in for lunch or whatever, and then boom, we cut to the funeral for Noah's dad. and I and I just wrote, "Ouch, dude." Um, so a bearded Noah, clearly grieving even harder now, finishes the plantation, the restoration of the house, and has like no more purpose. His dad is gone. His he fumbled a total baddie. Um, he's doing this like carousel routine, making excuses not to sell it to people. It's very clear that he's spiraling. And this is also where we meet Martha Shaw, um, Noah's, for lack of a better term, booty call, right? I mean, she is a war widow who he totally just like gives the cold shoulder to whenever she tries to get more out of him. Um, like if she tries to suggest doing anything other than just banging, he like totally blows her off. Um, she says at the end of our introduction to her, or maybe it's not her introduction, but like this is the quote that like just encapsulates this poor woman for me. She says to him, "A woman knows when a man looks into her eyes and sees someone else."
Oof.
I just wrote,
Good
"Ouch,
line.
dude." All right. So I kind of took us through a little bit of different strokes there from the funeral to meeting Martha, etc. Do you have any thoughts on the funeral? Because you mentioned it earlier. Do you have any thoughts on Martha?
No thoughts on the funeral, though. Now that you mention it, it is a pretty funny cut. Um, I, I don't want to talk about Martha too much yet because ultimately, I will say ultimately I end up liking that character and like what they do with her.
She's
Um,
interesting. Yeah.
yes, because they didn't necessarily go where I thought they could have, and where they could have gone would have been more, I think, formulaic and um, frankly boring. I ultimately liked where they ended up going, and I thought that this was a an interesting introduction to her. So I don't want to talk about her too much yet, but I will have more to say about her.
All right. I've got more to say about Martha too. I cannot
Oh,
wait. I can't wait. I mean, it's
save Martha.
save save Martha. Why did he say that name? So Allie tries on her wedding dress.
Who are you thinking about?
Can you tell we're recording this super late in the night? Allie tries on her wedding dress. But she gets handed a newspaper for some reason that I can't recall. Oh, the wedding announcement is like in the paper, right? That's a thing
Mm-hmm.
that newspapers do. I don't read newspapers.
That used to be
Anyway,
a big deal.
it used to be a big deal. So she gets handed this paper, and right there is a photo of Noah's restoration of the house featured in some other story, and she faints. Uh, she faints hard. It's a nice little beat of like slapstick comedy, and we cut to Allie kind of recovering in the bathtub after, um, with the wedding veil still on. I think that's kind of a fun, like, striking image. Um, and then right after that, pretty much, she visits Marsden at his office and is in a spell. She's having a crisis. Um, she articulates here that, like, oh, she doesn't paint anymore. And that's like concerning to her. She feels like she's losing herself, is like the implication. And what I do like about this Marston character is that he immediately pretty much is just like supportive. He's not like, why would you spend time with such trifles or whatever? He's like immediately like saying, sure, if you want to do that, you should do that. And I support it. He's just like totally oblivious to this breakdown she's having. Not oblivious, but like clearly does not recognize the gravity of it. Right. Because she then says that she needs to quote unquote like get away before their wedding. And um in my opinion, I don't consider myself the jealous type, but I think Marsden is way too understanding in this scene when this kind of wrinkle turns up. Um, this is the kind of security that I think only exists in these kind of romance movies. Like my I trust Jessica with my life totally. But like this is bonkers. If we were about to get married and she was like, "Oh, before we get married, I need to go back to my not hometown, but like my summer town where my, one former lover still resides just for a little bit." I'd be like, "Don't do that."
But does he know that
So
part?
that's what I was going to say. So give me if you have thoughts about the newspaper and the wedding dress and the bathtub, please feel free. But yes, that was going to be my question to you. Is the only explanation here is that Marsden does not know about Noah at this point, right? There's no
Yeah,
other way he'd be this chill.
yeah. I don't think he knows about Noah at all, and it makes sense to me. I buy that Allie wouldn't talk about Noah or that time in her life, or want to talk about that time in her life, especially since I think the movie tries to suggest that Allie is pushing herself to move on, whether or not she actually has, and ultimately she clearly hasn't, because she is asking to go back to this place and moment in her life. Um, yeah, I think the only way I could understand Marsden being cool with it is that he has no idea that Noah's there, that he has no idea that she had this meaningful relationship with this person at that time in her life. And otherwise, the idea of, going back and reflecting on my past before moving into the future and starting a new life, I could see it.
Yeah, I mean, fair enough. I wrote
Maybe I'm
here.
just less jealous than you.
I'm not. That's the thing is like I don't think I'm jealous whatsoever. Like you want to go out with your girls to a club or whatever, I do not care as long as you have fun. I don't really like going out in public that much. I'd rather you go with your girlfriends. But like I was just like the only explanation is that he has no idea who Noah is, because this is like
Yeah.
insane levels of security with your relationship. um so Allie shows up at the plantation, and I keep saying that it's not still well, does it stop being a plantation once it's not like
Yeah, now it's
I'm
just a
sure.
house. There's
mm,
well, I guess you can't remove the history.
it's still a plantation. Like even if you're not uh,
It's
this is
not an active plantation.
this is two white guys talking about the semantics of okay, so if we don't get fucking canceled for talking about Rachel McAdams like a piece of meat, we're gonna get canceled for this. I I
You
think
brought this
it's
on
still a
us.
plantation. They don't
Okay.
have,
I'll accept your ruling.
they don't have an right. It's not actively uh there aren't any slaves on the plantation, but it's still a plantation.
There's no one there except Noah.
And yeah, there's no one there except Noah. We should clarify that. This is not 12 years a notebook. Allie shows up at the house. Noah is, it's still Ryan Gosling, so he doesn't look that bad, but, he's supposed to look like shit with his scraggly beard and his greasy hair. Um, she's all done up in this very like manicured maroon getup. This, very striking contrast between the two of them. Um, I love this moment here where he has to kind of Gosling holds his hand up to like shield his eyes from the sun just to get a better look at her. Like he can't believe that she's actually there. You know, it's a small detail, but I think it's pretty um romantic and kind of says a lot about what he's feeling in that moment. Um, she clearly panics and tries to run away, but she drives directly into a fence, dummy. And Noah comes over. They agree to go inside together. Um, what do you think about this reunion?
Well, just to reiterate, not a fan of that beard. I think it looks bad on him.
That's
Otherwise, the
all you.
reunion. Otherwise, the
Okay.
reunion's nice. The crashing into the fence is a funny bit. And Noah takes it like a champ. He doesn't seem bothered by it at all. That his hard work is destroyed.
Is it Gosling with a beard in general, or is it Gosling with this beard in the Notebook? Because not to give too much away, but you and I have already viewed a few other movies that we're going to talk about in this miniseries, both of which feature Gosling with facial hair. So, are you like anti Gosling with facial hair? I think he looks pretty sexy with some facial hair. We're talking Fall Guy. We're talking, does he have a beard in his mustache and the Nice Guys is pretty striking? Or do you just want him clean shaven Ken all the time?
I like, if I remember correctly, in Drive, he's got like stubble. It's like maybe a light
Mm,
facial hair. I do like his facial hair more in Blue Valentine and Half Nelson. The full on, wilderness beard is just not a look I'm a fan of in general.
all right. Teach
So
their
I
own.
do think it looks better in his other movies, but I don't love him with too much facial hair.
All right. I guess I did not foresee this happening, but I guess Gosling's hair will be a point of contention throughout the course of this miniseries. I will certainly have some shit to say about his hair, the hair on the top of his head when it comes to Blue Valentine.
That
Um,
looked fine.
it looked bad. I hate it.
I
I
don't know
hate
what
it.
you're
I hate it.
talking
I hate
about.
it.
It looked good.
It almost takes me. We'll talk about it later. It almost takes me out of some of the dramatic moments because I'm
Oh,
like,
it's not that
look at him with
bad.
this
It's a good
fucking
wig.
dumbass. It's not. Anyway, we briefly cut back to the modern times. The modern times. What is it, like a publication? We cut back to modern times, and this is where the twist kind of begins to poke its head into the frame of the film. The big twist about the real identity of these old folks we've been meeting. Um, the older version of Allie says, that she thinks she's heard this story before, actually. And she thinks she's heard it more than once. And Noah says, like, yeah, you have, baby cakes. And they take a brief break. Noah is analyzed by a doctor where we learn that he's in poorer health than maybe it seems. The doctor says he's suffered at least 2 heart attacks already. And the doctor also tells Noah that we have this moment that I thought was kind of unintentionally funny, where this doctor tells Noah that, reading to Allie is not going to accomplish anything in rehabilitating her dementia. Um, and I don't know. I just wrote here, like, no shit. Like, it's so clear that this dude is doing it out of love for his wife, you dumb fucking asshole doctor baby bitch. Like, why would you say that to somebody? That's so mean.
Doesn't want to give him
Um,
false hope.
I guess he doesn't want to give him. Yeah,
Bedside
I
manner.
guess. I guess maybe. Okay. To be fair, I don't know about what the general consensus was in 2004. If the public at large was like more of the belief that you could bring someone, quote unquote, back easier or for longer periods of time when they're suffering from dementia, but I don't think so. Like I don't know. This doctor was a fucking asshole.
He was nice.
I guess. Um,
A
I
little harsh.
okay. Let me take a beat and catch my breath. I'm getting heated up. You have any thoughts about this like brief little moment where we first start to rather as an audience, if you're a first time audience, you're learning a little bit that there's more than meets the eye to these old folks for the first time.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like if I had been unaware of the ultimate reveal, I, even being aware of the ultimate reveal, like I still enjoyed a lot of these scenes with older Noah and Allie, seeing their day to day, seeing their dynamic. Even like I enjoyed their banter when they're, talking about the story, and older Allie is like, what happens next? Like, what does she do? And he's very cheeky and it's like, we'll have to find out tomorrow. Or she says, that makes me sad, and he's like, that makes me sad too. I don't know, I enjoy a lot of the sequences with the older versions of these characters, and I do think it was nice to see these added wrinkles to this part of the plot, because it ends up being such a pivotal part of the story. We begin and end with them, we cut back to them very frequently. So I do like this scene.
Yeah, I totally agree. Back in the olden times, Allie and Noah discuss Marsden. I'm realizing that I don't remember the name of his character. I'm only referring to him as James Marsden, but it feels fine. He's such a ubiquitous like romance movie guy that I feel like I can just say Marsden. Um, Allie says that uh, she loves him and that she and Noah should just be friends. Which is, dumb as shit that she traveled all that way just to say that. Like, no shot. Do you mean that, girl? But okay. I guess we also learn here for sure that they never really consummated their relationship. I think it becomes more apparent here. Um, and Allie stays for dinner, and even though they're just friends, they get wasted and they flirt nonstop. Noah brings up that the room in which they are dining is the room that they almost fucked in, which is totally just friend things.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then he reads her poetry on the porch while they wax poetic about their summer love. They're just friends, though. They're just friends, guys. I wrote here, Allie, you are a Weasley little liar, dude. There's no shot that um, there's no way that she thought that this was going to be like an innocent little friendship tryst. I like Allie. I don't think she's a bad person, but let's be honest with ourselves, girl. Ryan, please back me up here.
I will say I was surprised at how quickly they became close again. I thought that, we'd see her sort of go back a few times over a few days. She'd slowly open up a little bit more. They'd slowly become more and more intimate emotionally, and then eventually physically. But yeah, pretty quickly, you see the sparks are still there. She stays the whole day into the late evening. They're referencing, old memories, old spots. And yeah, she's not as uncomfortable with talking about those things as I thought she would be, for someone who seemed so confused and unsure, and even a little bit reluctant to go back when she's talking to Marsden. But she very quickly seems to enjoy herself there.
Oh, and she's gonna enjoy herself more. We'll get to it.
Oh,
Uh,
yeah.
Before we do that, though, we cut back to the modern day, and older Noah's kids show up, and um, the orderly. I also was confused here. Maybe I just don't know shit about dementia. And like how you're supposed to interact with somebody with dementia. The orderly tells Allie, older Allie, that these kids are that these people are Noah's kids, but not hers, which I don't think is true. And maybe I misheard the dialogue. I think I think it's implied that like the orderly is trying like not to cause undue confusion or like mental taxation to the older Allie. And again, maybe I misheard this scene, but I think she says like, "These are Noah's kids, but not yours." And I just wrote, even if she has dementia, that seems kind of fucked up to me. Maybe it's protocol to just like not give like undue stress even to that degree to patients suffering from dementia. I don't know. I'm not a medical professional in any regard. I'm fortunate enough not to have had a family member who struggles with it, so I don't know what the standard operating procedure is. Um, but it just seems kind of demented to me. Um, this is also where we get part of the big twist, which kind of unfolds in layers. This is where we learn that these two older people that we've been talking with, metaphorically speaking, the audience has been talking with throughout the course of the movie, they are in fact married, which we learn here, which I think one could have surmised by now. I do not think yet that we get the reveal that this is Noah and Allie. We just learned that these two old people are married. Correct me if I'm wrong.
I believe that's correct. Yes, we
All
know they're
right.
married. And you're not wrong. It is the orderlies are very committed to the bit. But they do seem, older Noah seems very well liked amongst the staff there, and so I guess I can buy that he convinced them all to um go along with this plan of his to keep
Wait, no, go ahead.
their relationship unclear.
You think he put them up to it? My assumption was that there's some, I guess there's some sort of like unspoken, not unspoken. My assumption was that like in the medical community, the understanding was like, oh, if someone's suffering from dementia and they don't fully remember that they have children or not, like you don't need to like say when the kids show up, these are your kids, because that might distress them if they don't know, if they don't remember right away. Like if they
That
remember, great. If they don't say it because it might distress them. That was my understanding. You're you're saying that your read is that Noah is like putting the orderlies up to it for some sort of like sick fucking thrill. What do you mean? Like
well, no, I think you're right that they're trying not to startle her by providing her with information she doesn't remember. But I think they're also all aware that Noah's trying to bring the memories back
Oh, I
via
see.
this experience with the notebook. So they don't want to spoil the plot for her.
Right. The orderlies know that they're in a romance movie and that this is going to be a cool reveal for Noah to do later. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. Yes.
I don't know. I don't know if I follow your logic there.
I
But
think we're
okay.
both right.
I think I'm right. You're wrong. Nan,
We're
nan, nan,
saying the same
boo, boo.
thing. They
We're
they are
not.
they
We are
don't
not saying the same
they
thing.
they don't want to tell her.
Yeah, but I'm saying it for medical purposes, and you're saying like the orderlies are doing some sort of fucking mental saw trap on this old woman.
Well, they help with the dinner at the end, so they're clearly aware that he's trying to
As like a
bring her
romantic
memory back.
gesture. Yeah, what's the romantic gesture in like manipulating her out of recognizing her own children?
He wants her to remember via the notebook, not, cutting ahead and just telling her everything.
I think he just wants her to remember, period. I think if the kids showed up and she was like, "Oh, my children, my beloved children," he'd be like, "Oh, great." I don't think you think
Well,
he's so
clearly that didn't work. That's
no.
why they're using the notebook now.
All right. We're talking in circles.
Exactly. We're both saying the same thing.
We are not. We're not saying the same thing. Um I got to get past this. I got to get out of this. Back in the olden times, uh, James Marsden and Allie have this brief phone call where he senses things are a little bit uh, off center in terms of her kind of mental state. Um, Allie goes back to Noah's place the next morning, admires his woodworking. Later, she will admire a different kind of woodworking, if you know what I'm talking about. Um,
Mm.
they go for a ride on the lake. This is a very kind of beautiful, picturesque scene. Kiss the Girl might as well be playing. Um, there's tons of geese, maybe a few goslings in the mix there. Ryan rolled his eyes for any audio
Whoopee.
listeners. She feeds the ducks. They connect about the fact that Allie and Noah connect, not Allie and the ducks. Allie and Noah connect about the fact that he finished the house and kept his promise to her. And then they get caught in a rainstorm. Oh no. Uh-oh. What happens now? They rush back to the dock. They are both soaking fucking wet now because that's like a fun romance movie thing to do. Um, and this is where we get, frankly, one of the most quoted scenes of the film and of like modern romance movies, period. Um, this is where he says, I wrote you every day for a year, which is a line that is quoted very often. Um, I think the scene is really effective. I think the sheer like downpour is visually interesting. They really commit to just like hammering these poor actors over and over with this water. Um, what do you think about the Noah and Allie kiss the girls sequence?
It is pretty cool visually. Especially now in a day and age where I think there's often conversation about films being shot on location versus being shot on a soundstage and sets that don't look real, or going to no disrespect, like Vancouver to film a scene that's supposed to be somewhere else. And anyway, I liked that it looked like they were actually on this beautiful lake somewhere. And the downpour was very heavy, but it does make for a distinct visual moment, especially seeing them drenched in their clothes. It also, I think, matches the intensity of the scene and the dialogue. It's movie magic.
Yeah, and it matches the intensity of what happens after. Well, to me, this is one of the scene that we just talked about, where they're kind of confronting each other on the dock, is like one of the fucking like scenes of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's an example of like what great actors can bring to a film that's treading, fairly familiar ground in its genre. Um, you know, the the kind of intensity with which McAdams like calls Noah out for not writing to her, and his like exasperated reveal that he did every single day for a year. Like it just, I don't know that. Yes, you're right. Paired with what is actually very good craft in this scene, it just makes for such a home run of a moment. Um, and then it is really kind of a perfect um, appetizer to the first real sex scene between Noah and Allie. They make out, and this is the kind of make out that only, in my experience, this only happens in movies. They make out. It's like they make out all the way from the dock to inside the house is what is implied, and they make out all the way up the stairs, and like, well, listen, I've had a few makeouts in my life. The implication that you can have momentum, make out momentum, for lack of a better term, from all the way at the dock, all the way up the stairs to the bedroom, that's just impractical. That just doesn't happen. What are you talking about?
I don't know if you know your way. I think you can you can feel it out.
You're saying you're gonna make out that entire time nonstop up the stairs. That's an OSHA violation. You're gonna trip and hurt yourself trying to make out up the stairs.
It's tricky, it's risky, but hey, when you're feeling it and you can't control yourself,
I'm a passionate
that's what's going to
person. You're
happen.
saying you've done a lot of that in your day. Is that what you're saying to me?
Not a lot.
Uh
I'm not one to kiss and tell.
Okay. Well, regardless, uh, Noah and Natalie finally consummate their relationship. They finally bone. It's I think it's a scene that's handled very well. I think it's actually quite romantic. I You can kind of feel the longing. I think it's a testament to the capabilities of both the actors. It's a pretty well acted scene for a PG-13 movie. Um, it's kind of an intense lovemaking scene. You know, I don't consider myself a prude or anything, but like McAdams is convulsing and like the faces she's making and like immediately having Allie be like, "All right, let's go for another round." It's like I was just like, this is what like the tweens and the teens of our generation, because like I feel like the I feel like the teens and tweens of our generation watched this growing up and it was formative for them. I was
Hmm.
like, this is what they're watching on, on Netflix or TNT or whatever. Like that's crazy. Damn. What do you think about this sex scene, Ryan?
Yeah, I mean it's pretty passionate. And I think you're getting at this, that I think this movie works because you've got two actors that are committed to the bit and are selling it. Whereas in a lot of these movies, this moment comes off as tame or unsexy, unrealistic. There's no chemistry. It's not well shot. And the movie's been building to this moment, so it has to work in order for you to continue to buy into this plot. And it does.
Yeah, it's a good point. Like for like not to sound vulgar, but like it has it has to feel like a literal and figurative release, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because like there are so many of these romance movies where it's like, and this is the point of the story where they have sex and the scene is like, not to say that you need to have like graphic sex in movies, but like the scene in like a typical like lesser rom-com or romance movie that you like forget as soon as it's over is like, and we're gonna have the actors do a kiss. We're gonna push in real close on the kiss. We're gonna see a hand on like the small of a back. We're gonna see her hand on his abs, and then we're gonna cut to the next day. That's not
Yep.
what they do here. This is like a full on. We're gonna communicate that these people are like uh, frankly like craving one another or have missed each other. It's very effective. I think it's probably one of the better love scenes movie in movies. Like I was gonna qualify it. I was gonna say in like quote unquote recent movie memory, but I think just period. Um, and I love this little moment after their night of lovemaking. Um, it's so like well acted. This little like nuzzling that they're doing together. It's so great. I think it's so kind of cute and communicates their like rekindling. McAdams is like kind of convinced is she's very convincing in my opinion with these little like smooches that she's doing on him and they seem so in
Mm-hmm.
love, and that makes it all the more funny later too when they like do blow up at each other again. Like it's like a good dichotomy.
Mm-hmm.
um and then I always laugh at this scene because when she asks him what he wants to have for breakfast, um Gosling delivers the line pancakes, but like with a little lisp. And I don't
Mm-hmm.
know why, but that choice tickles me every single time. It's almost as good as the pancakes line in, is it Cabin Fever? The little
Cabin
kid.
fever.
The pancakes is just an all-timer word in cinema history between The Notebook and Cabin Fever. Um, I just think it's great. Do you have anything to add about this little I guess post coital nuzzling?
Just that the delivery of pancake is pretty funny.
It is pretty great. Um, so we also get this kind of bonkers interaction later where Martha shows up and McAdams kind of gleefully invites her into the house. And not only is Martha like crazy chill about the situation, like about meeting the woman that Noah has clearly been hung up on this entire time that she's known him. Um, but like, well, well, so Martha is like acting pretty, I guess. I don't want to say strangely, but like surprisingly for what you might think this kind of character would do in this situation.
Yeah.
And then McAdams is also, I guess she's still kind of in, they've rekindled their honeymoon phase, right? McAdams is handling the aftermath of her philandering with poise and energy and like this like effervescence. I wrote here that is Allie a psychopath? Like she's so happy about it. There's it later she will express some remorse, but she is like thrilled that she just cheated on her fiance. Um Anyway, we don't see this meal that Noah and Allie and Martha shared together, but we do see this moment afterwards where Martha is basically like co-signing Noah and Allie's relationship. She says to Noah that the spark that she sees between Noah and Allie reminds her of her husband who died in war. Um, I, it's an interesting wrinkle to a character. It's surprising, it's nuanced, but I also wrote here that Martha Shaw is the most cuckolded woman in cinematic history, and I can't think of a more worthy contender. You said you had some thoughts about Martha. Let her rip.
Yeah, I liked this scene a lot. You're right. It is funny that Allie's not thinking, oh my God, no one can know I'm here. I should go. I have to hide. She's just totally in a fantasy, which maybe
Right, like
just
your
says
wedding is
something
in the
about her.
newspaper. Your wedding is in the newspaper, ma'am. You can't just like. And sorry, go ahead.
I mean, I guess it just shows that she is clearly looking for some sort of escape from this new life that she has, and she's, viewing this reunion with Noah as, a fantasy, a getaway. She's still in that honeymoon phase, as you said. Um, yeah, I mean, my thoughts with Martha are I really liked the scene with her and Noah outside, where, she says that, the seeing the spark between them, between Allie and Noah, is sort of, you know, restored her faith in a way that she's happy for him, and that they depart on good terms. Again, this character could have been just a stereotypical kind of uh, barrier between these two getting back together, and instead, I like that the movie knows to, essentially kind of quickly write her out. You could also make the argument that she's only in two scenes and ultimately doesn't play a pivotal role. Is it necessary for her to be in the movie at all? I do like seeing that even if Noah hasn't moved on from Allie, he is at least has at least been with another woman since breaking up with Allie, which we don't see or really hear about otherwise. Um, so I liked this scene. Um, the relationship between Allie and Martha is weird but funny. And I liked the conversation that Martha has with Noah before she leaves and we never see her again.
Yeah, I mean, I'm poking a little bit of fun because like what a dream scenario for Noah is like your booty call meets the girl that you actually care about, and there's like no drama at all. She's just like totally chill about it and like gives you a pass. But no, I think you're right. I think like this kind of character in a lot of other, frankly, in a lot of other, romance or rom-com movies, that you might see just kind of dumped onto various streamers or whatever, this kind of character is like only an ornament. There's like nothing to chew on. So like, yeah, she's only in two scenes, but like they give her, even if you could argue that like in kind of a Bechtel test adjacent way, the only like I the only like identifiers of this person are her relationships to the men in her life. There's still something for the character of Martha to like do besides just like be an obstacle. So there is
Right.
something to be said there. Um, so moving on, Allie wakes up the next day to this like insanely romantic gesture where Noah has left arrows on the floor leading to a little makeshift art studio. I think this is also another like big gesture that kind of made me weirdly emotional for some reason. Like it's funny, like we don't really ever see Allie um paint all that much, but I remembered from earlier in the film that like, oh, she says she really wants to do this, and when she talks with Marsden, she's like, I haven't really done that a lot. And of course it's sweet that he remembered it after that Noah remembered it after all this time and like set this up for her. um Allie doesn't get to enjoy this gesture for very long because her mom shows up at the door to like harsh the buzz. And Marsden, Lon, that's the character's name, Lon. We're only like 2.5 hours into recording. um Lon is
He
on
does
his
not
way.
look like a lawn.
He doesn't look like a Lon. Lon is on his way down because off screen, Allie's dad has like divulged the nature of Allie and Noah's like summer tryst from way back in the day. So we do get the confirmation here that James Marsden did not know of Noah's existence,
Mm.
or at least did not know of the nature of Noah's role in Allie's like formative years. And off screen, he has learned this from Allie's dad, the big mustache guy. Um, so we get a fight between Allie and her mom, where her mom admits to hiding the letters, color purple style, but also correctly she correctly tells Allie that, well, what I did was bad. Well, I don't think that two wrongs make a right here, but she does point out that, like, you know, also not chill is cheating on your fiance, which, point to Allie's mom there.
Fair enough.
Um, Allie and her mom take a ride together to like a mill or a work site in town. And Allie's mom reveals her own backstory. She points to this random schmuck and says that she basically had like a Noah type guy of her own in her past. Allie's mom kind of gets teary eyed. She insists that while she loves, did I misspeak? You gave me a
No, no, no.
look.
You're dead on accurate.
Yeah, Allie's mom starts getting teary. She insists that while she does love Allie's dad, uh, she, feels conflicted about the choice that she made, security over love, etc. Um, I think it's interesting that she doesn't really explicitly encourage Allie to do one over the other in this moment. She even, as a gesture of goodwill, gives Allie the stack of letters, which, is a little bit too little, too fucking late. Like it's been years, but whatever. Um, she basically says though that like she wants Allie to make the right decision for her, which is like a sweet-ish kind of mother-daughter moment. I don't know that I would be as forgiving as Allie seems to be about the whole letter thing, but I don't know. Give me your thoughts on this whole Allie's mom becoming a real character here.
I thought this was so dumb and unnecessary. Now, I get that they're trying to make her character more layered, that it's supposed to give you an understanding of why she behaves the way she does earlier on in the film. But this just felt like a stretch to me, that she essentially went through a very similar relationship at Allie's age. And even that part is fine, that is what it is. But I just thought the shots of them in the car, basically right next to this factory or whatever where the guy is working. I mean, it's so obvious. I can't believe it took as long as it did for the guy to actually notice them there. And this guy is just this old man working working the coals or whatever he's doing. I don't know. I just thought it was staged in a way that was hard to take seriously.
It's not my favorite part of the film either. Um, I think it's a yeah. It. I mean, I appreciate the attempt at making Allie's mom like a little bit more complex, but
Hmm.
like I don't, I don't really care. Maybe that's too harsh. I was gonna say I don't care that she has the exact same quote unquote like backstory as Allie. Like I'm sure the point, of course, is that this is a universal, to a degree, a universal conflict that a lot of women or people have to go through, and
Hmm.
relating it from one generation to another has some sort of um, deeper meaning. But I agree with you that like the staging does not really drive that home in a way that connects with me emotionally. So we're on the same page there. Um, Back at the plantation. Sorry, that's what it is. Alice tells Noah that Lon is coming to town, or is like basically in town, and this leads to what I consider like, you're laughing. I hope you're not about to break my heart here. This leads to what I consider like the scene of the movie. Like,
Hmm.
so Noah is rightfully pissed that she's entertaining the idea of continuing on with her marriage, with her planned marriage after the kind of rekindling that they've had. He accuses her of just caring about, money, not really being in it for love. Um, they kind of fight their way out to the car, and they have like the fucking iconic notebook scene. It is so sick, dude. I think it's so good. This is where we get the, what do you want? Which is probably even more quoted. Probably, I think for my money, if I had to guess, I think it's probably the most quoted. At least in my personal life, it's the most quoted. Even if it's just
Hmm.
like trying to figure out where Jessica wants to go for dinner, I'll break out a "What do you want?" Um, you could argue that like maybe because of how ubiquitous it's become in popular culture, that it's maybe turned the corner into being corny upon rewatch, but I don't necessarily think that. I buy the like tormented expressions on each of their faces, the like indecision. I love the little moment where like McAdams as Allie kind of like half begins laughing and half begins crying at the same time. It's, I don't know. I just think this is like the most like clipped, probably. If I had to make a wager, I would say that like this is the scene on YouTube that has like the most views. It is like, to me, this is the Notebook, right? I mean, I see you smirking over there. I hope you're not about to bust my balls here, but what do you think about like the Notebook scene?
No, you're right. It's really well acted. The dialogue is pretty iconic. I would wager that you're right, that it's one of the most watched scenes of the movie online. And if you had people, vote on their favorite scene, I'm sure this one would be high up there. Um, and again, Gosling and McAdams sell it. The frustration, the passion, the confusion on Allie's part. Um, I mean, I think this movie is usually at its best when it's just those two actors yelling at each other, or making out, or sharing a quiet moment. And so yeah, no hot takes from me for this one.
Okay, all right. I just listen. I we plan to try to put this out audio and potentially video. I just saw you smirking, so just for people listening audio only, I just wanted to. I was a little worried looking over at you. I don't know.
I'm full
Um,
of surprises. I
yeah,
contain multitudes.
that much I know for sure. Um, so Allie rushes off. She almost crashes her car again
Again,
on the side of the road. Women drivers, am I right? Anyway,
swing.
um, on the side, women are great drivers. Please don't cancel me. Please don't hurt me. Please don't dox me. Um, on the side of the road, Allie cracks open a bunch of the letters. She starts to read. She cries. She makes the rest of the drive to her hotel. We travel to the modern day for just a moment. We meet older Allie and older Noah. Noah recites some Walt Whitman, some poetry, a little clue to their true identities. I see Ryan rolling his eyes, not a
No one's
Whitman
done
head.
that before.
No one's recited Walt Whitman before. Yeah.
How
Um,
original.
okay. Goddamn. Sorry he didn't like pull out Dr. Seuss or whatever the fuck you listen to. um,
Boring.
uh, goddamn. Yeah. I'm trying to get my track here. Anyway. So the two older versions of Noah and Allie, they go into the nursing home. They have this romantic candlelit dinner set up for them. This is a nice little sequence and one that I think is um kind of necessary to the film. As we kind of uh unveil the real nature of the movie, or the real nature of this part of the movie, I should say. It's nice to start to shift the weight a little bit and give them a little bit more meat to play with. Basically, it allows these older actors to be real characters rather than just like narrative devices for a second, which I think is nice.
Mm-hmm.
Um, this is something that we'll come back to, but before we do, we go back to the olden times. We meet James Marsden again. He has learned about the philandering. We don't see her, correct me if I'm wrong, we don't see Allie like tell him what happened, but we're dropped into the aftermath essentially.
Right.
And he is the sweetest, most darling man about it. He's like immediately very forgiving. He's barely even pissed at Noah, really. Um, or if he is, he decides to just like totally, crush those feelings deep down inside him. Um, to his credit, he basically, very maturely says, I don't want a wife who doesn't want to be with me. And I'm going to go find not better, but, better for me. And that's basically how I interpret this scene. Either that or he's just like a huge pussy. What do you think? What do you think? Or if you have thoughts about the little brief section of this candlelit dinner too, I'd love to hear it.
Nothing to add about the candlelit dinner. I think we're on the same page with that. Um, though I this is where is this where she finally has the breakthrough?
The
Is that at the
breakthrough.
candlelit dinner?
Well, we come back to the candlelit dinner in a
Right.
bit, and
Okay.
that's
Okay.
where
So
that
I'll
happens.
I'll hold on that then.
Yeah.
Um, I do kind of wish we got, because we never actually hear Allie tell Marsden that she's choosing Noah, right? We get another cut, and then
Yeah.
eventually we go back to her going to the house, which I guess it makes sense in that when we go back to the house with Noah, it's more suspenseful if we don't know what she said to Lon. But I do feel like Marsden deserved a last moment. I would have liked to have heard what he said to Allie after
Oh,
she
after
gave him
she
the
like
news,
explicitly chooses Noah.
dumped his ass.
I mean, we do kind of get that though, right? He basically breaks up with her in that moment.
Yeah,
I mean,
true.
you're right. We're dropped into it at like we don't have to see her deliver that difficult information, which
Right.
is a tactic that movies and TV shows do pretty often. Actually, like I've often I'm struggling to like pull an example, but I think maybe there's an episode of like Better Call Saul or something where, in order to get around what is frankly probably a pretty complicated scene to write, rather than write out a scene of dialogue where a character admits to some sort of thing that they've done, or where a character learns some like damning information, you get dropped into the aftermath of that part of the conversation,
Mm-hmm.
um, which oftentimes I actually find more interesting than having to
Fair.
sit there and see Allie like through tears be like, you remember that dude I told you about, et cetera, et cetera. But I do take your point. Like Marsden has maybe in 2004, I would have to pull up his filmography, but maybe in 2004 he was too much of a tertiary player overall to like be uh be afforded like a big final fuck you or big final like flashy thing. But yeah, he's talented enough where I would have welcomed that. Um so we like you said, we go back to Noah's house and Allie runs back to him and they embrace. Then we get the big reveal of the movie that you were alluding to earlier, where the older version of Allie remembers that this entire story that we've been, you know, privy to is actually the story of these older folks that have been narrating, or these older folks that have been kind of uh, framing the entire piece. It is, you know, I feel like because we spoiled it up top, maybe I've implied that it's like too predictable to work on me emotionally, but that's not the case. Like it is to a degree kind of predictable if you know enough of like cinematic and storytelling language, but it works on me every time and it's like emotionally stirring every time. Um it's just such a romantic idea that this older version of Noah goes through the rejogging of this woman's memory over and over and over again just for maybe 5 minutes of her like being um present in her full like capacity. It's so sweet. And like we then get to see these two older versions of these characters slow dance, and it's short lived because the movie decides to like kick you in the fucking gut because I mean, if she loses her um, grip on what is actually happening mid dance. She stops recognizing who Noah is. She like pushes him away. She panics. It's like, it's people say like, oh, well, that scene is just manipulative. And I'm like, eh, not this scene specifically, but like in general, that's like an argument you'll hear. And I'm like,
Mhm.
yeah, sometimes, but sometimes like that's what movies are, right? If you're they exist to manipulate the emotions, and as long as the intent is pure, then like I have no issues with that. And to me, this is like a it's it doesn't feel um it doesn't feel just for like roller coaster effect. Like to me, it feels, you know, genuine. It We have this very sweet part of this scene where they have this connection after all this time, and then the sadness right after. Um, I don't know. James Garner's look of like horror while it's going down just breaks my heart. Um, it pierces right into you. Um, do you agree with that assessment, or do you find this a little bit too much of a too much of a surface level manipulation of the heart?
Nope, this scene totally works for me. I don't think it's manipulative because the dementia is built into this story. I mean, this movie couldn't exist without that. Like, it's not just, a random plot point that they're throwing in at the last minute. I mean, this is a core part of the movie that, one of the protagonists is no longer able to remember her romance yeah, with the love of her life because of this dementia. So it doesn't feel manipulative. To me, it felt earned. It was incredibly moving. Now, there's a version of this movie that ends here. It ends with her saying, "How much time do we have?" Him saying, "We've got a few minutes," and it just ends with them slow dancing and it cuts out.
Huh.
And I think that could have worked too. It would have been, you know, a different tone. But I think there could have been a sweetness to that too. The idea that, there there's no permanent breakthrough, but Noah will continue to fight for these moments, and it'll be worth it to him and to her to have this extra brief time together. But like you said, it is really, Gardner really sells it well to see the horror and sadness on his face as we see her forget everything again.
Yeah, I'm like furrowing my brow over here because I almost wonder if your suggestion of that different ending is something that I would have preferred over what we'll talk about the actual ending.
Mm-hmm.
But I almost wonder if I would have preferred that. It feels more poetic in a way because it's a little bit more abstract. It's not so finite um,
Yeah.
compared to what does eventually happen. Um, but yeah, and I mean, as far as the manipulative argument goes, I guess to clarify my point is like my opinion is that like movies as an art form are about manipulating the emotions
Yeah.
of
I
the
mean, that's
viewer.
storytelling
Yeah,
is
exactly. So like
manipulating whoever's reading or watching.
yeah, so like the art, but like I guess maybe my argument is that some stuff is manipulative, but from a place of, a genuine desire on the part of the artist to like connect with the person watching. And then some is like, uh, some is manipulative with the underpinning of like, look at that cool trick I just pulled off. Are you crying
Mm-hmm.
yet? You know what I mean? And there's a very specific difference there. Um, So the reveals, though, keep coming, Ryan, because we get a reveal after this that also kind of makes me teary eyed, if I'm being honest. The titular notebook is, in fact, Allie's notebook that she herself wrote as she began to lose her memory so that Noah could, in fact, read it to her and they could, be together again, excuse me, in some sort of way. Um, and do you find that to be a hat on a hat? Do you think that's one step too far, or does that work for you?
No, I liked that.
I
And
like it
I
too.
I think that was one thing that maybe wasn't spoiled for me, that I didn't know or didn't remember. And so I liked that reveal. And I think it adds to my theory that all the nurses are in on this. They know Allie wants to rediscover her life via the notebook, not via them. See, it all comes back.
Okay, now your argument is coalescing a little bit more. I'm not conceding that I'm on board, but that gives your theory a little bit more credence. But yeah, okay, sure.
But
No,
yes, I did like that reveal.
I agree with you. I like this little thing too. I like I'm sure someone out there thinks it's like one step too far. It's like, oh, also like the note, like she, like I don't know, something about like maybe I'm just like, uh, I love in movies when it feels kind of like coming from a good, sincere place, and this just to me is a good example of that. The next morning in the old folks' home, Noah goes into some sort of cardiac arrest. He is basically bedbound. Um, and the older version of Allie witnesses this. We get a brief montage of her being bummed because her boo is incapacitated. Not that she necessarily remembers that it's her boo, but like this gentleman that's been reading to her. Um, and the second he is able, he basically goes on a quest to find her again. Not like a, you know, uh, not that it's a mystery, but what I mean is like the second he's able to walk again, his mission is to go find her, which is, another little sweet bit of romance. Um, and there is the brief little moment with an orderly that I really like where she basically like um knows he's not supposed to be out and skulking the halls at this hour or supposed to be visiting her at this hour, but she like lets it slide anyway. Um, I think it's pretty sweet. Um, what do you think? And do you think the orderlies know that he owns a plantation?
I have a feeling they don't know about that part. I doubt that he referred to it as
That's
plantation when he
what it
was
is. I'm gonna
talking
look it
about
up.
their
I'm
home.
gonna look it up later. We can't. We've already gone for quite a bit of time, but it doesn't stop being a plantation just because there stopped being slaves there. Anyway, go ahead.
It's a good point. I just I like the idea as you brought up the kind of brief montage of her looking sad now that she has no one to read to her. I would have liked this wouldn't have made sense at all, but I would have liked a comedic bit where we just seen orderly reading Harry Potter to her or something instead and her looking miserable. Um yeah, no, it is, he's up and running pretty quickly. I guess he just, these heart attacks roll off his back.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. And as soon as this next scene begins, I'm basically holding back tears like every time I see it again.
Really?
Well, I know what's about to happen, and I just think it's so sad. And so Noah creeps his way into Allie's room to be with her. He sits at her bedside, and they reconnect. Um, so he is clearly committing to being there for her until the end, even if she can't recall anything, or when she does recall things, it's seconds instead of minutes. Um, the music starts to swell. They lay in bed together, they cuddle, they say goodnight to each other. And because I know what comes next, their little good nights to each other just like break my heart. And I'm just like a fucking emotional mess. Um, because I know what's about to happen. And the next day, the next morning, the orderly walks into the room and they find Noah and Allie together in bed holding hands. They died in their sleep together. Cue tears. Um, it's a pretty easy move to just like have both of your lead old characters die together at the same time, but it works on me. Um, we cut to the credits and the romantic, sad, tragic, beautiful kind of atmosphere is immediately undercut by a crazy like saxophone riff, and the movie ends. Ryan, before we get into our final thoughts, please give me the take on the ending here.
Conflicted. I I like what they're going for. I admire the commitment to the sadness. We all have our triggers, the things that we just struggle to suspend our disbelief for.
Uh huh.
And the idea that these two could just will it so that they both die in their sleep together, just I struggle with that, as
Yes.
romantic and grand as it is. But one thing I love about the ending, and I feel like a lot of movies don't do this anymore, it just ends. There's no like scene with the family, with the funeral, with the orderlies talking, at least they died together. Some cheesy line. There's no
Yeah.
flashback to young Noah and Allie. I thought for sure they would bring back like another moment with Gosling and McAdams and end with them. Like the movie just they die and then it ends. And that I liked.
That's a good point. I I I I guess I've never had. Well, first of all, I've never had a difficult time suspending my disbelief because I guess you hear about these stories all the time where like old couples die within a week or a month of each other, et cetera, et
True.
cetera. And
True.
like, I don't know. I guess like while we're going throughout the film, it's like Noah happens to see Allie on a bus. That's how he learns about the engagement. Like,
There's a lot of coincidence. You're
yeah,
right.
and there are a lot of coincidences in life. But fair enough with your point there. But I fully agree with like it is kind of an interesting and applause worthy move for them not to like as they're fading into the forever, cutting to some montage of like, and now we're gonna see what Gosling and McAdams' wedding was like, and we're gonna see McAdams pregnant with their first baby. Like,
Mm-hmm.
uh, not that a montage like that couldn't work in a movie like this, but like it's a nice show of confidence to be like, we don't need that. We've done enough already, and you are going to be affected by this. Movie over. Go fuck yourself. I like it. No, you're
Yeah.
right. It's a good move. So, that's the end of the Notebook.
The end.
It's a long notebook. Apparently, we've been talking for quite a while. So let's do our final thoughts and then give our rating. And as this is our inaugural episode, I'd like to introduce to you, Ryan, our rating system. Um, I do not personally like doing ratings with like numbers, like out of 10 or out of 5. I just feel like that's cold. It's too analytical. Um, so I have a different scale, and it is in some ways a 1 to 5, but uh it's a little bit more malleable than that. So at the bottom, we have this movie is a Helena Bonham farter. And after that, we have the movie was Gail Garcia Banal. And then after that, one rung up, we have Yeah, it's cool. I'd see this movie a second time. Um, right after that, we have I don't just like this movie. I Jennifer Love Hewitt. And then at the top of our scale here, we have this movie is a G.I. Jane 2. Can't wait to see it. Oh, that was a nice one. I'm here. Uh-oh. Richard. Oh, wow. Wow. Will Smith just smacked the shit out of me. I wish I'd gotten more
Oh.
laughs throughout that, but that is the rating system I've settled on. So, you know, feel free to give it up more next time. I worked hard on that.
I they're so good. I have no response.
Yeah, fuck
Any
off.
reference of Jennifer Love Hewitt, I'm happy to be a part of.
Yeah, yeah. Give me your final thoughts on the Notebook and then your rating.
um this movie's solid. I like it. You know, it's well acted. Most of my critiques were in jest or nitpicks rather than, you know, real problems with the movie. Um I don't know that this movie has the power over me that it has over other people, and there are less famous, less beloved romance tearjerkers that I find more effective. Like I mentioned this to
Name one.
you,
Yeah.
We Live in Time, which came out, you know, a few months ago.
Hmm.
I thought was much more moving and emotional and just better in about every way than this
Huh.
movie. But I doubt that that movie will have the legacy of this one.
Okay. I don't know if I agree, but continue on. So, I guess wrap up any other final thoughts and then give your rating on our scale.
It's an interesting Gosling performance. Looking at his career, I guess it makes sense. It's obvious in hindsight, but I never really thought about just how many romances he's been in. And some of them are more traditional, like The Notebook. Some of them are incredibly depressing, like Blue Valentine. Some of them are more genre-y, like La La Land. But he is often, I think, called when, you know, they're looking to do a sweeping romance with a great actress, and Gosling tends to have chemistry with a lot of leading ladies, and he's got the looks, he's got the charm, but he's also able to play that sadness and anger just about as well as anybody in his um, age group. So I'm not at all surprised that after The Notebook, he, you know, was the guy that they called to do a La La Land or a Blue Valentine or some of these other um, movies with a romance front and center, even Fall Guy, which is a bit more of, I guess, an action romantic comedy. Um, but it's an interesting and obviously very important movie in his career. For rating, I think I would go with yeah, yeah, it's cool. I'd watch it a second time. Is that what it was? Close,
Yeah,
right?
or I guess we could say, yeah, yeah, it's cool. Yeah, it's cool. I'd see this movie a second time.
I'd see this movie a second time.
Um, so that's your rating.
That's my
So
rating.
that's fair. And I am a little bit hotter on this movie than you. Um, I I wouldn't put it in like my favorite movies of all time list, but I have to say that like as far as this kind of romantic movie, like the Nicholas Sparks kind of flavor of romance that has kind of become like an industry all on its own, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think this is the gold standard of that kind of movie. Like, I don't think you can do much better than this with with that kind of source material, that kind of template. And for that reason, I just like I think I'd have to say that I don't just like this movie, I Jennifer Love Hewitt. Like, I think this
Wow.
is the best example of this kind of movie. And it's like, you know, not to not to not to not give credit where it's due to the actual filmmakers, but I think like the movie does look good. Production design is good, costuming is good. We talked up the rain sequence. Um, but man, it's hard to imagine recapturing this kind of. There aren't that many romantic movies, particularly now, that have such kind of a big cultural impact that lasts. You know what I mean? Um, and I think it really does come down to the strength of these two performances. And I think it is proper that this kind of made both of its leads uh, kind of unflappable movie stars for the rest of their lives. Um, and that's kind of that's kind of where I land on it. You know what I mean? I think within the context of the kind of movie that it is, not that romance movies are inherently lesser, but do you know what I'm trying to say? Like, this is a very specific flavor of romance movie,
Mm-hmm.
and as far as that goes, this I think this is probably one of the best to ever do it. So for that reason, yeah, I Jennifer Love Hewitt, and I think we will. You kind of hit the nail on the head in terms of what I think about Gosling and his chops at this point in his career. Like, I think it's a pretty easy line to draw from this film to something like Blue Valentine, which is, more um still a movie about romance, but
Yes.
is a lot more kind of uh I guess subversive
Mm-hmm.
compared to something like The Notebook, right? Like, if you're a Gosling fan in 2004 because you saw The Notebook, and then a few years later you go, "Oh, Blue Valentine, I loved The Notebook." You're not gonna get what you're expecting.
I'd
Um,
love to talk to those people about Blue Valentine, though.
yeah. Um, but yeah, Gosling has this because this is a series about him. Maybe we'll talk about McAdams more specifically in the future down the line. And because this is the first one we're covering, currently The Notebook has to sit at the bottom of my ranking. That's just how it is, or the top, however you look at it. But I think Gosling has such an inherent kind of like he is very charming, um, but he has kind of an inherent dissatisfaction in his eyes, or like an inherent sadness that I just feel like is always there, even in something like uh even in something like The Nice Guys, which I
Totally.
think kind of helps that because like not only is the character more explicitly written that way, but like that complements Shane Black's kind of style so well. And then even in something like a Barbie, I think just by Gosling having something behind the eyes that is not replicable easily, it makes that character feel so much more uh, deep. You know what I mean? Not that it's even written poorly uh, or shallowly, but like there's just a certain X factor that he's got that just you want to know more about him, no matter who he's playing. So that's where I land on the Notebook. So we don't differ all that much, but both generally favorable. So I hope that people will uh, be okay with us not giving it perfect marks. Um, well, thank you for joining me for this kind of epic uh, epic read of one of the most iconic books in all of cinema. The titular Notebook from the Notebook, probably one of the most popular books in all of cinema. Can you think of one that's, more famous? The Turner Diaries?
As far as famous notebooks, I would hope that the one in the movie The Notebook would be up there.
Yeah, I was trying to draw from Tom Riddle's dumbass book and Harry Potter movies.
That's a good one. Tom Riddle's Diary.
Yeah, I guess. But the Byrne book. Speaking of McAdams, that's a good one.
That is
anyway, good. While Ryan and I wax poetic about books, I'm going to sign off here. Thank you so much for listening. Tune in next time where on Best Known For, we will be talking about Half Nelson. This is a movie that I threw into the mix from my own personal list. I had not seen it until I chose to add it to this podcast, but Gosling was nominated for an Oscar for this film. So please, if you're interested, tune in and check out what we have to say about that movie. It's way meatier than I was expecting. But anyway, thank you so much. I will try to put links to social media and things in the description of this. Ryan, do you have anything to say to the people before we sign off?
Thanks for joining us. We look forward to doing it with you again.
Thank you very much. Go eat some pancakes and bye.
Bye.